Welcome back to the home studio and welcome to episode 38 of the Stevie Richards Show, where we are closing in on 100,000 subscribers. And the reason for that is my co host, James Romero. He didn't think the intro was going to be that long, so he was taking a drink.
Yeah, thank you
Future
for
episode.
that.
Future
I'm
episode.
so glad you. For a future episode, we will have 100,000 subscribers. We're going to make a big push for this. I want 100,000 by the end of March. Do you think we can do it? I certainly. When we did this on the Dutch show, I told you. Did I tell you this? We had like 98,000 subs, and we thought, oh, this is a good time to start pushing for 100,000. And then within a week, we got like an extra 15,000 subs. I was like, okay. So yeah, I thought maybe we should start pushing at 96 this time and see if we can get enough to get us that silver plaque.
James is going to get a silver plaque because he has many spaces on his wall to fill in with silver plaques, not only for the Stevie Richards Show, Story Time with Dutch Mantel, WSI, but now James Romero and a potential other channel that we will tease in the upcoming episodes that I'm very excited to see. I'm a big fan of your channel, the way you react to everything. And even though you say you write it down, you have your bullet points, the script and everything, it comes off very natural and organic. And I can definitely appreciate that. I'm a huge fan. Huge James Romero fan.
That's very kind of you to say so. The only thing is that it's probably because after 20 takes, then I've memorised the first two paragraphs, and therefore it is actually off the cuff. Goodness me!
You're like, screw the script after 20 takes. It's like my fitness content.
Yeah,
to get
easily
through the opening is like 20 minutes, and the video is only like 8.
Oh, dearie me. But Stevie, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart in the most disappointing way. The WWECW, that's what the people have called it now, not just the WWE version of ECW, the WWE relaunch of ECW, but literally it should be called WWECW because very watered down and a lot of stuff. And we're going to be covering multiple episodes on the new ECW, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. For this episode, we're going to be talking about sort of the preamble, the precursor to December to Dismember, the much maligned, and rightly so, only pay-per-view that was under the WWE ECW banner. I guess you could say that because the second One Night Stand was still treated as an ECW reunion show that would end up sort of spinning off into the first episode of WWE ECW on Sci-Fi. But for this one, we're going to be doing a bit of a preamble and sort of just how we got from, or how you guys got from, like, what, June, July, whenever it was, from the first ECW on Sci-Fi to the disaster that was the December pay-per-view, December to Dismember.
That was right. That was the same year. It felt like it was like 5 years apart. It was just like every week. Oh man, I used the word disappointing. I think the title of this episode should be The Birth of the Death of WWECW. Because really, it was the beginning of the end when they started doing the TV show. The second the zombie came out, we can do a whole watch along, probably on Patreon or reaction video. It should be part of Botch Watch, which obviously it's Botch Watch. The next episode is the last Botchade, and then Botch Watch 4 will be something we're going to try to mimic, Undiscovered Country for 5 or 6 to mimic Star Trek. Or if we were there were 2, I would have done as a Star Trek fan, I would have done into the Botchness instead of Into the Darkness. So, but that will be coming soon.
What was the second? The Wrath of the Botch of Khan?
Electric Botchaloo, I think.
No, I'm thinking the second Star Trek film. We should have had the Botch of
the
Khan,
Wrath of
but then
Khan,
it could be Tony Khan.
The Wrath of Botch.
Yeah. No, I think it should be the Botch of Khan, and then it could be like an AEW exclusive one.
Can we call it AEW Botch Watch? The Wrath of Khan? Because it's the same exact.
I practically insist. What was the 6th Star Trek film called?
Undiscovered Country, I think.
Ah, I see. Because is it true that it was the even ones were good and the odd ones were bad? So I never watched 6.
Well, the odd ones, I mean, being the first Star Trek was just beauty shots in the Enterprise to say we really are using a lot of special effects, but there was no real story. There's no episode. They get better. You can't get much worse than 1. A lot of people love 1. But Wrath of Khan with Ricardo Montalban and the way Kirk and him interacted and things like that. As a matter of fact, on the Wrestling Analysis channel, I took the scene and pretty much put my head over Kirk and that YouTube copyright claim symbol on Khan and then shot the missiles from the security code because I had dropped her shields, and it was just a way to, it got copyright strike, by the way, as
Oh,
usual. So it was
good.
good.
So you need to have just, I don't know, a green screen kind of thing, and then you just be on your knees saying, Khan! For some sort of AEW theme.
We'll do that on our
episode.
next ad read from NordVPN.
Yes. Oh, speaking of which, we'll be talking about NordVPN,
Yeah.
of course, later on in this episode.
What's the opposite of VPN?
Just not having one?
Nope. No privacy. I'm looking up.
Oh, damn it. I haven't got the copy in front of me. We'll be talking about NordVPN later as well. Right, so... Oh, yeah, we haven't even done the plugs, the intro. So there's my channel, James Romero, that Stevie was very, very kindly talking about before. There is the Stevie Richards Fitness channel on YouTube, 93-something subscribers. Go and join him over there, where he reviews the latest tech as far as fitness, gym equipment, and all that kind of caper. And also there is the upcoming tech channel, which you've decided that the old Stevie Richards Wrestling Analysis channel is going to turn into, which is going to be all about technology, gaming, and all that good stuff as well.
And if you heard our pre-show for episode 38 on Patreon, you will know that James and I are probably going to do a play-along on WWE 2K25 because he has a PS10, by the way. And if you don't know what that is, stacked to the PS5s. I have none, but he wants me to go out and buy one. And I will do that because I'm a good co-host and friend.
Absolutely. And I will donate absolutely nothing to it because you'll get your payment will be the sheer pleasure of having a PlayStation 5, the superior console, aside from the Switch, which is actually the superior console.
I would say the Steam Deck OLED is
above
all those. Oh, by the way, this will be the time I'm going to do an experiment where I'll email Talent Relations to send me a code for 2K25. They don't answer the spine infection one, but that code will come in like 5 minutes. But I don't care at this point. Yeah, I'll ask him for a free code or something. I'll see if they can send it to
get
us.
me one as well. I nearly downloaded it last night. I don't know.
I'm going to try. Listen,
pounds.
there's based on prior experience and precedent, I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be a funny story to tell on episode 39. Well, we didn't get you to a doctor, but here's a couple codes for a video game.
You need to introduce yourself as former TNA superstar Dr. Stevie Richards and just see what they say. Don't even mention WWE.
To WWE talent?
Yeah. A former WCW star, defeater of Scotty Riggs. There's
a sick kid name. There's a sick child named Michael Manning with a spine infection. So could use a code. I'm not going to do that.
Right up.
Once John Cena will show up with a Make-A-Wish.
Oh, yeah. Well, you'll show up for dinner for $25,000. Heavens to Murgatroyd.
Oh, is that one of our news items? That would be awesome.
I wish it was. We're going to be talking about John Cena at the end of it. We've decided that we're actually leaving the news and the what went wrong stuff till the end, so we're going to have the thematic stuff at the beginning. But one more thing, that the most important thing we need to mention in the plugs is, of course, the Patreon. So what is accessible right now for people who are thinking of signing up to the Patreon?
Well, as early as this morning at patreon.com/Stevie Richards, I ended up, once again, it seems to be a weekly thing where now I have a production monitor, which I got from the thrift store, by the way. It's pretty awesome. I'm able to see everything we need to do here. So I did a quick video behind the scenes, a little bit of, behind the scenes content for that. But the meat and potatoes of what the producer tier especially is all about are the watch-alongs. Every week on Monday, we have a different watch-along. As a matter of fact, we're going to start asking Patreon supporters on what they want to see, usually involving me, but it's not limited to that. For instance, if someone, hint, would turn around and say, we would really love for you to watch the Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior match from WrestleMania 6, I'm not going to object. Are you going to object, James?
Yeah, because I want to watch the Halloween Havoc one.
Oh, we have to watch that. That would probably draw better numbers.
Yeah.
For the wrong reason. But the watch-alongs seem to be the most enjoyable thing, but also you get show notes for every episode at least 24 hours before the episode. You get pre- and post-show content, which you've called the show within the show. You've said the podcast, but I refuse to acknowledge that. But the show within the show and anything else as far as what I do in my, how should I say, insanity of trying to increase the production value of the show. We almost upload stuff 7 days a week to Patreon to show you the process of everything we do.
And before we get onto the main show, as it were, there was one more thing that you want to say, and it was a shout out to your youngest fan.
Our youngest fan, both of us. This was an incredible thing. It kind of ties into the cameo because this was a cameo video request and probably my favorite one to date. All of them were really good, but I got this from the person's father. Hey, Stevie, thanks for the podcast. I'll let that slip, by the way. I'll let it slide.
Mm.
My daughter Ruby was born in November, and the show is giving me something to watch. My late sleepless nights, James knows about this, looking after Ruby. What I didn't expect was for her to become a fan too. When I look after my daughter, I'm usually in a black t-shirt. I have long brown hair tied back and with a short beard stubble these days. My daughter is convinced you are me. So when I'm not home, my wife Marina puts the show on for her to watch, and she coos and smiles at the screen when you are on because she thinks you are her dad. Parentheses me. It's the funniest thing. Most kids watch Miss Rachel. Ruby watches you. My question to him was, by the way, I don't know how you top that. I mean, we have somebody else's kid walking around going, ha ha, aha, everywhere. We got that email before. Uh, it's kind of like I sent that to Maven, and he echoed what we got into wrestling in the very beginning for. This is the kind of stuff that why we do what we do. It's awesome when you have that kind of content that the family can enjoy. When we started, we talked about, we curse once in a while. Sometimes I slip and I feel bad about that, but we try to put a show out with content that everybody can consume, enjoy, and not have to, oh, can my kids hear this or watch this? So it's good to see generations of people doing that. And like, I can't say anything, just like what I said in the cameo. I don't know. It's beyond words, like how that warms my heart and how awesome that is.
Yeah, over the course of how many years I've been doing this, there's a couple of compliments that always stand out. One of them is I've been going through a difficult time. You've helped me distract, with whatever content, whether the interviews or Dutch or you, which is always, just an enormous compliment. The other one is we're almost like ASMR or whatever that an acronym is. Where, and I do the same thing. I listen to podcasts to sleep. And some people would say, well, that's not a compliment, because you're so boring, you fall asleep. No, you're so comfortable with the voices or the content or whatever that it relaxes you. And I always take that as a huge compliment as well.
We've gotten a few of those emails and messages as well. And they said that it's not an insult. It's just that your voice and the way you guys present everything, it's fun, but it's not sensory overload. I can kind of relax and listen and digest, I think would be the word. They can digest what we talk about. It's, we cover stuff that's kind of controversial from time to time, sometimes every week, but I think it's kind of presented in a way that's very logical and we think things through and we talk back and forth. And, we've also got the compliment, which I love, that you and I talk to each other kind of like how they talk to each other when they talk about wrestling, like two friends, people in the family, or if they're watching it and if they see something, they kind of cross-reference our show to see if we saw the same thing. So that's awesome.
We were just saying on the Patreon as well, we seem to be going from strength to strength as well. I think the most views we've had ever this past month. And this is for anyone who's in YouTube, March is a downtime for views as well. So once again, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Once again, we're hoping to actually get to 100,000 by the end of March. So we'll do a little push on the clips and stuff like that. And hopefully, by the way, I've got to buy a second silver YouTube play button award for you because they only give you one.
You deserve it. It's really all because of you that we're at this point.
No, I'm sending you one as well, for goodness sake.
Now we're arguing like husband and wife.
Yeah, I know. But no, I'll be sending you one. Don't worry about that. When we get there, let me tell you. December to Dismember. Once again, this is more like the precursor to the pay-per-view and just sort of how it just fell apart, really. We're going to be just talking about some of the big stories in the first few months, of the WWE ECW experiment, would you say? I don't know. But the biggest one is the day that Rob Van Dam and Sabu got busted. And you told me beforehand, you remember this happening at the time. He was Rob suspended and stuff like that, but I'll just give you the sort of basics of it. The new WWE version of ECW was already annoying long-time fans. I mean, basically, I wrote this later on. It's just like, from the off, it seemed like one giant troll job to just upset long-time ECW fans. Anyway, We've been force-fed the Zombie on the first episode, non-ECW characters like Kevin Thorne and Mike Knox performing alongside, the Sandman, Balls Mahoney, just incredible, and of course Stevie Richards. But at least in the beginning, Rob Van Dam was the ECW champion with the original the last incarnation of the ECW heavyweight title. And then Rob Van Dam and Sabu had their Jim Duggan Iron Sheik moment. Do you want to explain it all, or shall I continue sort of laying the groundwork?
Well, you can please explain further from what you read on it. I'm going to give my kind of take from the locker room, but I want to preface it. Number one, based on the rise and fall of ECW, which was an incredibly successful money-generating documentary DVD that led to the relaunch of ECW, but with the WWE spin on it. Wasn't originally supposed to be like that. I was really into a few separate conversations with certain players, talking about Dreamer, Shane McMahon, other people, that this was going to be completely different. So bear in mind what we're saying about it being a disappointment and it just was an experiment or whatever. It wasn't supposed to start off like that. It really was supposed to be a tried and true recreation of the original ECW brand. Now, obviously, we couldn't crucify people or light people on fire or do any of that stuff, at least not certain situations week to week on TV. But as with anything else, when it comes into too many cooks in the kitchen, too many visions, and you have the original guy with the vision that was successful having to battle with Vince McMahon and all these other people that had a different vision, that was the beginning of the end. One note that you put in the notes, Rob was also WWE champion from One Night Stand. So he was sort of an undisputed world champion at the time that this arrest happened.
Aside from the Raw version of the belt, was it the Raw version at the time of the belt? So there was a SmackDown champion, a Raw champion.
Yeah, it was Cena's belt. So this was the WWE title, and then there was the World Heavyweight title, correct? Or the undisputed one.
So there were still three, quote unquote, world titles, and WWE and Rob Van Dam had two of them. So not undisputed, but definitely the reigning.
Well, you have to, before we even get into that, you have to talk about the fact that the way I think WWE viewed Rob was very, I would say sometimes they were truly, high on him as far as, oh my God, that's a bad way of putting it. He was very hot and lukewarm. He was never cold to them where they buried him, but it was a very much stop, start, stop type thing. So this thing that happened in One Night Stand with him beating John Cena, who at the time, maybe not in 2025, but he was the dude. He was the mascot for WWE. Vince protected Cena as much as he could. And to have Rob go over really did let all of us look like, wow, they are going to take care of ECW. It is going to be a true representation. It is going to honor the legacy. And our biggest star now is put over for the WWE title over the mascot, John Cena. Dude, that's like, you know what I mean? I think they were just setting us up and getting our hopes up and just bringing us down.
Yeah, the performers and the fans alike, let me tell you. So the real issue is, I'm sure anyone who lived through this at the time will know the story. So, Rob Van Dam and Sabu were pulled over for speeding. They were found to have something like 18 grams of weed on them and various pills. I'm not sure if they're all prescription, and also some paraphernalia on Sabu as well. WWE. Here's the thing. WWE suspended Rob for 30 days. And I thought it was Sabu as well, but I was looking at his matches, and he'd never stopped wrestling on TV, so apparently it was just Rob.
I think they ended up starting to bury Sabu at that point, right? Didn't he lose a bunch of matches? Outside of me, I know I wrestled him after that as well.
He lost all his matches towards the end of the year, but they were still fairly high on him. But they actually had Sabu wrestling Big Show for a couple of months, including at SummerSlam that year as well. So they weren't killing him off, but he was in the title picture for a while, and then after that, he was just another guy on the card. With that being said, Rob is suspended for 30 days. But just before he's suspended, it's almost like a Brock Lesnar thing in UFC 2016. Well, we know you're absolutely rolling, doing your blood is full of all the illegal substances, but we're still going to let you wrestle to suit our needs. And with Brock, it was Mark Hunt. With Rob Van Dam, they got him to lose the WWE title to Edge in a triple threat match that also featured John Cena on Raw. Then the next day, Rob loses the ECW title to the Big Show in no less than Philadelphia.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Let's
That's what
kill
I
that
mean.
town.
Now that's cold. You know what I mean? I said hot and lukewarm. They're at that point, they're doing what they can. It's one of those things. I've been a part of listening them talk about other talent, and they probably said the same thing about me. Like, let's give them what they want and let's show them how wrong they are for wanting it. The fans. They love Rob. They think Rob's great. We'll give it to him. And then this is a perfect opportunity for us to have him lose both of those titles. And then more importantly, look and say, see, he's not like Triple H and Shawn and all these people without really saying it. You're saying it. And if it was somebody else, I know there's been people that have failed drug tests who have been figured in, who have been the favorites politically. And what did they do? They still allowed him to wrestle. They go over and then they serve their 30 days and they never make mention why they're gone for 30 days. As a matter of fact, sometimes they would, if they haven't done it, they want to do the injury angle to take them out for a month to protect that talent. They clearly have the choice about how they address this.
Yeah, there was a lot of like ones with like Jeff Hardy or Randy Orton. I seem to remember back in the day where I think Randy especially should have been on his third strike and you were fired like several times. And then I don't know if it was for drugs or anger management and stuff like that. I think the way they got around it with Randy is that, well, he was suspended once for an anger issue and not a drug issue, and therefore we're giving him another chance, and not because he's a future world title contender that's figured in.
Yeah, and Randy draws, and Randy's a legend, and Randy deserves, to get the opportunities. But back then, we may not have seen Randy Orton if he was a different person and he wasn't figured in. And obviously, Triple H thought a lot of him. That's the difference between staying there, well over 20 years, multiple world titles, millions of dollars made, millions of dollars generated for WWE. But some other people that we've seen have never gotten the first chance, much less second, third, fourth, fifth.
I sort of, by accident, I think I mentioned Jeff Hardy, and I sort of lump Rob Van Dam with Jeff Hardy as someone who can be your world title holder and somebody who, like Jeff, just gets over on their own, regardless if there's a story or no story, or if they're figured in or not figured in. He can be plugged in anywhere. But for whatever reason, not so much with Rob, more Jeff, has been his own worst enemy, I guess, over the years. And this, with Rob, it just seems like one giant piece of bad luck and bad timing, really. But why do you think it is with Rob that he wasn't figured in as much as he could be? I mean, starting from 2001 in WWF, he could have been the champion. He was so popular. He could have won it off Kurt Angle or Steve Austin during the invasion.
Well, there's a saying I've said a couple times, maybe more than a couple: do good, but don't do too good. I feel like Rob got on the radar of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and all the guys bringing the knives out, who they don't even have to say no. They just stand next to Vince, and Vince can say something like, so what do you think about this? And like, and that's all it takes. Not a no, but not a yes, and not a resounding yes is enough to make Vince, for some reason, change his mind or not commit fully to that. There's lots of incidents, and I'm naming names because it usually is Triple H as a talent and lumped right in there with Shawn Michaels. And I know Rob had some dealings with Shawn here and there, some personal stuff here and there with Shawn that's been squashed. And Rob has said that they get along fine. But yeah, there's guys that when you're as popular, as over, as talented, athletic, charismatic, and nobody ever saw anything like Rob Van Dam. What's wrestling? I'm gonna get, you know what I mean? Over the top, loud. People picture Dick the Bruiser type promos, not Rob Van Dam. Hey, this is just me. I'm cool. That's it. Smiling, laid back. But in the ring, that laid back attitude just translates into intensity while still being Rob. They couldn't quite figure it out because he didn't fit in that pro wrestling mold. So it could have been a little bit of misunderstanding, but I believe it's more the political knives came out and started catching him in his back.
Paul Heyman, after Rob...
By the way, same thing with Taz. I'm sorry to interrupt. Taz, on his debut, how over was Taz?
Oh, crazy.
At the Garden against Kurt Angle. Okay? Now, Taz could have stuck up for his business and rubbed people the wrong way. I don't have any information on that, but I can tell you right away, there's 2 or 3 guys at the top, and they might be the same names I talked about that said, "Nah, too short." Like, that's all you need to say to Vince. Too small, too short, and that plants the seed. And then they set Taz up to fail after that.
Paul Heyman, after Rob turns back up after serving his 30-day suspension, Paul Heyman tries to basically push Rob as the face of ECW. We're going to talk about Kurt Angle a little later. But essentially, even as a very young adult at that time, I remember thinking very clearly that it was just a fool's errand to push Rob, because I don't know if I was reading it at the time or it was just obvious that Rob was never going to be the champion again in WWE or ECW. So it just calls for it just made for a really anticlimactic story, whether he was working with Big Show or whoever else, that apparently Rob was just never going to be trusted again. For something that was, quite frankly, I mean, especially in 2025, a really minor infraction. Even in 2006, it just seemed like complete overkill to suspend him and strip him of the belts. I mean, what was the reaction, I guess? Because I asked you this off air, and you went, there wasn't a huge outcry when he was suspended.
No, I don't recall any kind of outcry publicly or to the office or anything like that, but I know amongst the ECW guys, or even me being a WWE guy that had been in ECW, they're looking at that like, they already looked at us kind of like, yeah, we're kind of not sure about this thing, even though, like I said, we had the promise in the beginning that it was going to stand on its own. We would have our own agents. Shane and Dreamer would be kind of running it. And then I guess final approval from Vince. Paul's involved majorly, I guess, as the booker of the whole thing. You know, we talked about that's why I never really got any kind of opportunities for past, conflict with Paul. But when we were looking at that, it was almost like, I guess you can't have an outcry because at this point, everybody's probably scared for their jobs. Most guys just got there and got hired for the new ECW. I'm already an old toy, so I'm like, eh. But amongst us, we're like, okay, well, they have every opportunity and they have every reason to bury everybody now, including ECW, because in their mind, hey, we give you a shot. Now you proved us right. And like you said, Rob and Sabu, for what they did, it didn't need to be. The punishment didn't fit the crime. Even back then, it's like, who didn't know that Rob had that hobby?
Mm.
Who didn't know?
But they
You know what
both
I mean?
had pills on them. That's the thing. But Sabu doesn't get suspended, but Rob
Well, I
does
don't even
because
know.
he had weed.
I assume Sabu was suspended too. That's really news to me because you would think logically looking back at it. Now you researched it. That is really like if Rob got suspended, which he did, and Sabu did not, man, they were singling out Rob. That's the only thing I would think.
I better be right on this, but I was looking at the dates and it seemed like that. I'll research that more as I ask you this next question. Rob then goes to be shunted down pretty much to the middle of the pack before leaving WWE in June of 2007 when his contract with WWE expired. Rob got more heat on himself prior to leaving, and around December to Dismember time, in fact, for not going on the, do you want to do the air quotes with me? Voluntary. Aha.
Ha
Tribute to the troop shows in Iraq. He said absolutely not. They couldn't force him. But guess what they also did was he basically was in the doghouse after that. Did you ever go to Iraq for the shows?
No, never went to it. Never went to any of the tribute for the troops overseas, and they did it. They've done that domestically well after I left the company. So, like I say, I left. They threw me out. Got rid of me. So, with Rob, now like he told me this story, and he's told this story many, many times. And it might not have just been me; it might have been people in the locker room. But he became even more of a hero because I remember it was Johnny, I believe, it said, "Hey, it's just voluntary. You can go to Iraq. You don't have to do it." And he goes, "Okay, I don't want to go." Well, I was just saying it's voluntary. I'm your pal. And he goes, "No, I'm not going to go, Johnny." So then I think Vince came into the picture, right? And he said, "Rob, it is voluntary to go to this, to go to the tribute to the troops." He goes, "Cool. I don't want to go." He goes, You don't understand. It's voluntary. He's like, cool, I'm not going. He's if it didn't happen that way, I hope it did. I wish it did, but I do recall that something where Vince kept repeating, "It's voluntary," and getting angrier and angrier each time he tried to let Rob know it's voluntary. And Rob's right. Why would he want to leave at the time his wife, his home, to do that?
I
It's
think
not
his
like a
wife might
battle
have been
royal
like
where
unwell
pride.
around the time. I'm
It's not
sorry
like
to
a
interrupt.
yeah. Go ahead.
Rob's wife, I think, might have been unwell at the time or something. I hope I'm not getting that wrong. But I mean, there's
Well,
more important things for him to be worrying about if that was the case.
unwell or well, I wouldn't want to leave my wife. It took me that long to find her. I wouldn't want to leave her for anything. So yeah, and it was not a completely safe kind of proposition if you think about it. Lots of guys that were telling me they had to do that maneuver thing to kind of avoid any RPGs or anti-aircraft missiles or any. It was a pretty deep. They were going right into Iraq. I think the other one is Afghanistan, right?
Hmm.
So they were going right into the belly of the beast.
Yeah, I remember hearing a story quite a while ago where, like, one of the generals or whoever it was who was controlling or, in charge of one of the bases in one of those countries actually said, "What are you doing here? Nobody ever visits us here because it's so dangerous." But WWE was really going deep into the war.
First time ever. That's what Vince is big on. First time ever. Maybe last time ever. But yeah, Rob was a locker room hero, at least amongst us, for doing that and actually saying it. And then the ridiculous gaslighting, which it wasn't even called gaslighting back then, but they were trying to push this propaganda that it's voluntary. And for him to do that, and they were probably pissed because it opens up other talent to say, everybody wants to be first to be second. They see Rob doing it and they're like, I don't want to go either. And Vince was not very happy about that. You know what? I would rather, I'm sure Rob would say the same thing. So you're saying you're not petty, by the way. You're not petty at all, WWE. But if his wife is unwell, which we don't know, but even so, I do not want to leave my family. I do not want to go here. It's way too dangerous and it's not worth it. And have a general say, yeah, we don't want anybody here either. What if Rob heard him say that and he landed? He's like, oh my God, I should have trusted my instincts and stayed home with my wife. So good for him. I mean, oh, you're going to lose fake matches? Oh my God, what's at the end of the world? Because Rob Van Dam he did it not long ago in AEW. Step right back in the ring and be just as over, if not more, than he was back then.
Yeah, he's not wrestled in about 11 months. Rob, don't yell at me if I get that wrong or got that wrong about you. I believe, and it's his first wife as well, not his current partner. Now, I'm also pleased to say that I was absolutely right. I'm pretty sure Sabu was not suspended, whereas Rob was. And during the time Rob was sat at home doing nothing, you wrestled Sabu twice, including at Saturday night's main event.
Yes. If you want a record-setting match, that was very. And I was traveling with Sabu during that time. I do have a Sabu story. I think I've told it on the WSI interview. But yeah, I wrestled Sabu. It was actually Saturday night's main event, and then the very next ECW TV taping. Correct?
Yep. So from Dallas and then Sci-Fi 6, Corpus Christi.
Yeah, he was definitely one of my favorite opponents in the ring. One of my favorite people to be around. Sabu, and this is Dreamer. This is everybody who's ever wrestled Sabu or been a part of ECW. Sabu should have made millions upon millions upon millions of dollars for what he did and how much of a pioneer and ahead of his time Sabu was. From Japan to ECW and everywhere else, Sabu really there wouldn't be the style, and people could probably say that's a good thing if there wasn't, but there wouldn't be that style of wrestling if it wasn't for somebody like Sabu. And you put Rob right in there, but he preceded Rob, and his style and what he did had a whole different look and feel to it than a Rob Van Dam. That's why they teamed up. You figure they team up, they would be kind of like less than because these styles that are kind of similar, but they got even more over as a tag team.
So we're going to be talking about Sabu in a few minutes, actually. One more thing to add about Rob is basically, I think I said this before, but he left in June of 2007. His contract is expired. He just saw the writing on the wall and said, forget it. He did end up wrestling at the end of the year once for the WWE's 15th. Was it 15th? It couldn't have been 15th in 2006. Whatever, it was some like a Raw anniversary kind of thing, I guess.
Was it the number of episodes? I believe it was an episode anniversary.
Yeah, maybe it was, but I think it was at the end of the year, or the end of 2007, so it would have been, or maybe it would have been the beginning of 2008, and then it would have been 15 years. Yeah, that would have been it.
You know what's funny about that with Rob? Think about Rob. Like, he went through all that. They tried to make his life, just miserable as far as work environment and not getting the opportunities that a guy like that deserves. But he has to leave and come back as a part-time guy or a one-night type of special attraction, and they treat him better than when they had him under contract trying to make money with him. Isn't that weird?
He's a new toy again.
Yeah, he probably said, "I'm out of here after, like, when do I become an old toy? After like 4 weeks, or let me go 3 weeks to a pay-per-view and get the hell out of this place."
So you know, Stevie, as well as I do, that WWE did all they could basically to hold back Rob Van Dam from becoming the face of the company. But do you know that there's a product out there that even Triple H and his golden shovel couldn't hold back, and that is NordVPN, from protecting all of your devices, hiding your IP address and helping stop data leaks, especially when using public Wi-Fi with their easy and intuitive software. Access favourite streams and social media websites from across the world that are geo-blocked, for goodness sake, or otherwise region exclusive, without losing internet speed. And you can save money and avoid price discrimination by being able to switch your IP location and see if a product is cheaper from another region. And most importantly of all, improve your device's cybersecurity and get dark web alerts to discover whether your personal information has been compromised. Stevie, over to you.
James, Hulk Hogan also says, "That doesn't work for me, brother, but this works for everybody." So to grab our huge discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/BWO. Our link will also give you four horsemen, 4 months free on a 2-year plan. Remember, there's no risk with NordVPN, a 30-day money-back guarantee. They stand behind their product. The link will be in the description below, as well as the pinned comment.
Next, we're going to move on to something that actually you sort of half hinted at beforehand, where you were saying something to do with, just a bit of a nod or not a nod from someone like a Triple H or a Shawn Michaels and things like that. So the biggest, I don't want to say homegrown star of, but maybe you would say, as far as like a main roster thing, CM Punk with WWE ECW, apart from, the originals or someone like Kurt Angle coming from SmackDown or Raw or wherever he came from, CM Punk is the standout sort of new star in the WWE ECW. And I wanted to mention this because the month before, and once again, I saw this as a young adult fan watching Survivor Series, and CM Punk is teaming with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And I found it particularly interesting, the reactions with them. And I was always wondering, are D-Generation X, as they were at the time, are they trying to latch on to Punk to sort of get some of the, new superstar rub from him, to make them seem hip and cool and whatever? Or are they tagging with CM Punk for another reason? And I don't know if I'm getting too conspiratorial. Say, oh, let's work with him, let's see if he's got it, and then...
Oh, I'm right there with you. I'm already going to finish your sentence for you.
Please,
I know
please
what you're
do.
thinking. Triple H and Shawn Michaels, their pattern of behavior with these talents, and it's been proven, it's a pattern. What they do is, and these are, some people like it would Ben Hamina talked about, like Triple H being the least cool, in touch guy that could try to act in touch and cool because of Lemmy, the Motorhead stuff. Like, he's kind of outdated if you think about the current stuff. So what I look at, and I'm no different. I mean, I love 80s love songs, so I'm right there with Triple H. Lemmy never sung those, so I'm not a fan of Motorhead for that. But what I'm looking at, Triple H and Shawn, a little bit with Punk, definitely with the Spirit Squad when they were at their height and most over. It's literally, let's latch on to them, let's use them to get us over, then let's tell the office they don't have it. So you get like a three-pronged attack politically of what you can do. You can look cool by being with Punk, and that's why I'm amazed that Punk got as far as he did during that time, because him and Hunter definitely didn't like each other. I've seen them interact when I was there, and I got to see them interact. Shawn and CM Punk got along a little bit better, but you can tell Punk had his walls up and knew what he was dealing with. But with Hunter, it seemed like two different, they were talking at each other in a way. And I was like, oh, this isn't gonna. So I'm amazed Punk got as far as he did. And the reason was Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman and him struck up a friendship and a common, I guess, common goal. I don't know, in OVW. When Punk was in OVW, Paul loved Punk and ECW for nothing else. And I proved it because I wrestled him a ton of times, was the vehicle to get CM Punk over. And I've said it in past interviews, if that's all that they wanted to accomplish is to make Punk a star, they accomplished their goal, if nothing else. A lot of people fell to the wayside, including Rob, Sabu, you have Big Show, Lashley, you have a ton of people, Test, who else? Dreamer, the FBI, everybody. I didn't even get out of the gate. I mean, that was Joey's quote on commentary. I don't even count when it comes to that. But there's a lot of talent. Like, we look at Balls Mahoney. I got a Balls Mahoney story to tell you if it comes to that point. It's incredible what I saw, what Balls go from, and then basically to at the end of his time there.
Yes, that will be coming up in a take a drink future episode. I'm gonna come back to CM Punk in a second. I also want to make mention of the Survivor Series match that Mike Knox, who is one of the new breed, I guess, of WWE ECW stars, was eliminated from that Survivor Series match in 40 seconds because Shawn Michaels legitimately had no idea who he was.
Wow. I mean, how does it finish? Is that the finish that was pitched to Mike, or was it how did that work as far as backstage? I would assume if he said, I don't know who this, he didn't say it to Mike Knox. Sean doesn't have the balls to say that, but he definitely made it known that, like, that's my guess. Am I off with that?
I would have to re-watch the match, but I think with the review, he may have actually said it on TV or said it to the camera or something like that. It's like, I don't know who he is. And apparently that stems from a few weeks earlier, where he legitimately told somebody, who is that guy who we're wrestling? Because he didn't watch the ECW on Sci-Fi Show.
Well, I understand that, but that's no way to, if you don't know who he is, but he's figured in, and you want to beat him in 40 seconds, you just basically, and then you say on camera, like, kind of like, that's the reason Sting didn't even go to WWE back in the day when it was WWF. Because when Rock turned to Booker T and said, who are you? Sting was like, oh, okay, I get it. Mike Knox is instantly buried in the same exact fashion of, I just beat this guy and I don't even know who he is. Like, literally, that's a nobody. And Mike Knox was, man, he was a hell of a talent. He was a monster, but he could work.
He's still out there, isn't he, Mike?
I believe so. I'm not sure, but I know I wrestled him a few times in the new ECW, and he was really, really good. And then he was in that Carnival act in TNA and a couple other things, and he went to NWA for a little bit. And I think he wrestled Trevor Murdoch on one of the pay-per-views or TVs.
Yeah, he's still wrestling for NWA as we speak. Not currently, but you know what I mean. Let's go back to CM Punk.
I could be having a taping at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., 9 a.m.
Yeah, you could be. You smart ass.
Hey,
With,
your name's Knox and yours isn't, so you're a tag team.
I can see you searching for that.
No, I didn't have anything. I just went, you're not.
Right, but CM Punk, once again, you say, I don't know how he continued having a job there for so long, but is he just that willful to get through the nonsense? And also, you said that Paul Heyman was basically his mentor, who would smarten him up about, some of the more snake-like types in the back who might be trying to undercut him. But is it just a tribute to? I mean, what did Vince McMahon say to you? Not enough of an arsehole? Is CM Punk enough of an arsehole, basically?
Well, I don't think Punk was even an asshole when it came. They could argue with me and say he totally was. I believe the protection factor is much more important. I was smart to direct. I was smart to a lot of things. It didn't mean anything if I couldn't get somebody to advocate for me. Paul literally did that, and then it turned into an on-screen thing with Punk. But no, Paul's protection and whoever else. And then somehow Paul gaslit Vince in the protecting Punk. That's my theory, because Vince was the staunchest supporter of Punk, which blew me away because Punk doesn't look like a guy that Vince would say, "That's our dude walking through an airport," this and that. You know, Hunter and Shawn, even Shawn's borderline, but Shawn was so athletic and could do things no one could do at that time. Vince ran with him. I guess Punk sometimes, and I expected Vince, as he normally did, to wake up one day and say, "Who's this fat, skinny or skinny fat kid with tattoos? Fire him." Because you know he did that too? Balls Mahoney. He
Really?
loved Balls Mahoney. Loved him. Captain Caveman. He set up the angle with Kelly, the Beauty and the Beast. I saw him producing pre-tapes and vignettes with Balls for Vince to get personally involved. And then one day, Balls was always out there. And I told you, Balls wore the Captain Caveman outfit when he rented cars, went to the gym, traveled, slept, whatever it might be. But Balls also would read outside by the tour buses and everything. So he always pulled up a folding chair and he would read a book. And sometimes he'd be smoking a cigarette, which also probably didn't help him. But Vince was producing all this stuff and like loving Balls and pushing Balls. And then you notice all of a sudden Balls wasn't figured in. Vince walked by Balls coming into the building. Balls is reading his book, maybe smoking a cigarette. And Vince said, "Who is that fat slop?" And then Balls was gone not long after that.
How could you forget somebody that quickly?
Yeah, Vince woke up one day and Balls was the greatest thing ever. Now Balls is a fat slop, which Balls wasn't. Balls actually was the lightest he had been in like 10 or 20 years. So he wasn't even, dude, that's just something that I heard. And Balls actually said Vince walked by and threw him a look. You know what I mean? And then it was over after that. Maybe not that day, but not long after that. That's what happens when the old man wakes up. One day he loves you. Like I said it in the interview, I'd work the same exact way. He'd love it for 6 weeks, hate it for 8, love it for 12, hate it for 3, go back to love it. And if you mixed in the low point with that meeting where they mention your name and nobody says anything, two strikes against you, third one's coming over the plate.
I specifically remember Balls Mahoney in was it the Extreme Strip Poker thing with Kelly and I can't remember
Mike
who else was there.
Knox. I think Mike Knox. That wasn't that was his girlfriend during that time. He was the jealous boyfriend when they first started. She wanted to dance, remember, and he wouldn't let her. They had the right to censor stuff.
I always found it funny that they hired Kelly to be basically a stripper who didn't know how to strip. She seemed to have trouble and I'm not even saying like, where someone rushes out and rescues her. It's like she didn't know how to take off her own clothes, which I found amazing.
I do have a story about that too, about her mom. They were in catering backstage, and Kelly didn't know much about anybody, but we had an understanding, everybody, that like, you got to be nice to these people. You can't be like that old school gatekeeper type thing. And I remember I was sitting there and her mom came up to me and was like, "I'm such a big fan of all the stuff you've done," and literally almost said she grew up watching me. And I'm like, ugh. Like it might be time to pack this in when someone's the full-time roster member, the mom, the parent is telling me she grew up watching me. I'm like, oh my God. And here I am at 53. Now Kelly's and her daughter is going to say she grew up watching me. Or my grandmom grew up watching you.
Hey, remember when Dixie Carter told you that you were washed up at 38 and you were the fittest you'd ever been?
Yeah, that's thanks for reminding me. Actually, old and broken down is more accurate. Future episode, everybody.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, Dixie Carter said she really grew up watching you.
By the way, Dixie, I know what you're trying to do by liking and commenting every time I put a fitness thing up. I forgive you. It's okay. It's forgotten. Well, it's not forgotten. We bring it up all the time.
Right, let's move back on. I know we were talking about Sabu before, you mentioned him briefly, and we sort of disappeared back to CM Punk. But Vince McMahon, he was Vince McMahon's golden boy. I mean, he really liked a lot of the ECW guys who came in, and maybe not Rob so much at times, but Sabu he loved, Balls Mahoney he loved, the Sandman he loved. You would have thought with all these, Vince McMahon himself getting behind all these guys that, the sky was the limit for, I mean, almost
Well, you just
literally,
got
I
to make
guess, for
sure when
Sabu.
Vince loves you, he never falls back asleep and wakes up. He has to
Mm.
stay awake and in love with you. That's
He just,
my theory.
he just basically reanimates every day.
I
It's a
don't know when
slightly
the
different
dude sleeps.
personality.
I don't know when the dude sleeps. I do know that there was a couple times I was told not because they knew I was an early morning gym guy. And that's when Vince would go sometimes, because sometimes I would go to the TV hotel gym because it was fully packed, but they told me you shouldn't do that. But I did it.
Why?
Well, it's Vince's gym time. And that's when I had ruthless aggression. And I said, F him. I don't care. That's my gym. You tell him to get out.
That's the
Then
spirit. I
that
was
was
going to say, it
that
worked
was
for
actually
Sheamus.
August. That was August. That was August 8th, 2008. Then August 15th, I got released.
I was going to say, it worked for Sheamus, it worked for Batista. All of a sudden, they started working out with Triple H, and then they were world champions the next week. You did the right thing.
I tried to work out with Vince and I got released, so that was my fault.
Fair enough then. Should have worked out with Triple H. Right, Sabu. So he was Vince McMahon's basically golden boy. He could have been potentially golden boy more than once as well. I think he had 3 different, very brief tenures with WWE. One was in '93. The second one he wrestled, or he appeared a few times at least, with the ECW WWF invasion surrounding Barely Legal. But the first one, '93. Vince actually wanted to sign Sabu for $250,000 in 1993. And apparently one of the reasons why the deal fell apart was that Sabu was not keen on having the Iron Sheik manage him instead of his uncle. And the original Sheik, Ed Farhat, of course. And then he didn't want to have the character that they'd given to him, which was going to be a Middle Eastern mute with his tongue cut out and maybe a mask as well. And eventually that gimmick would be given to Rikishi. And he would be called the Sultan some 3 years later, who, not coincidentally, also was managed by the Iron Sheik, and weirdly later also Bob Backlund as well. But after the police arrest, Sabu was not suspended. He ended up being the Big Show's first major challenger for the ECW title on house shows and SummerSlam. But Sabu would never win the ECW title, even though he was like maybe number 2 babyface on the show at the time in 2006. But then, over the course of several months, his push would de-escalate rapidly. Because he didn't want to do promos, he couldn't remember the lines. I'll mention a few other things. Why do you think that Sabu went from Vince's golden boy to persona non grata almost? Because eventually we're going to be talking about Sabu being written out of the Elimination Chamber for December to Dismember on the day of the show.
Oh man, I felt so bad. I was in the building that night. We'll talk about it in greater detail. I honestly don't know. This is why the fake subjective portion of the business is confusing at times, because how can you be so hot on a guy that has the same, level of contribution? It's not like he's injury prone. It's not like he can't do the spots that you brought him in to do and he didn't continue to do them. It's not like Sabu doesn't have that poison presence and he looks different than any other wrestler. Just the scars on his body alone. They never told that story, which in ECW, even years down the line, they would remind you, look at his body. It's a roadmap of scars. Look at how Sabu has been through the ringer. They could add so much of a hardcore element to him, but also casual fans looking at that going, maybe that was the part. You look at Sabu and you're like, well, my God, when I look at this other stuff, it looks fake, but I see the scars on that guy's body and what he does is real. That could be do good, but don't do too good. Also, Sabu is never comfortable doing promos. I told you before, he's very funny. He can talk, but as far as wrestling promos, it takes a whole nother outlook. And I believe Sabu can get across who he is. Quite frankly, if they put a mask on it would have hurt him even more because, like Vince says, we make money here, pal. His facials, his sell, his emotion, he never needed to talk. He was Sabu. Now, if you wanted to put him with a manager that could talk like a Fonzie and other people, that's the solution. They did so much to hamstring and sabotage each and every part, each and every character, each and every talent, and each and every way to present ECW in a good light. In other words, they're doing all the damage they're doing is killing off all the, how should I say, all the favors they did with the documentary, with the rise and fall of ECW. That was the best launch you could have for a promotion, and all it did was that each and every week after the beginning. It was almost like they just wanted to do another WCW invasion thing and just show that ECW was not as good as WWE. That's what
Yeah,
I felt.
it was like a UWF thing. You know, when the UWF went to the NWA and just killed everyone within weeks. Now, Sabu ends up apparently he was found asleep in backstage at the Baltimore TV taping on November 20th, which is only a couple of weeks before December to Dismember, which he was not in good shape, reportedly, which went against him. Shortly before that, I believe, he wrestled and lost to Umaga in 3 minutes. Umaga didn't even really register any of his offensive moves. And I don't know what happened. I mean, as you say, maybe it's just Vince waking up on the wrong side of bed and just say, he's done. Or we've had enough of him. But there was another incident that really killed him off. But we'll talk about those first. But yeah, how can you go from being challenged at a big show to you are jobbed out to Umaga in 3 minutes?
It's a mystery to me, and that's the only theory that I can stick to is it's subjective. It's what Vince thinks, and he still had all his yes men there, so they're never going to argue when Vince says, he doesn't have it anymore, right, guys? They're gonna agree. Nobody's gonna push back. So that's all it is. That's why in wrestling in general, I'm so happy we're doing what we're doing now. Because even though we kind of are at the mercy of the YouTube algorithm and other things, and people wanting to stay interested in what we talk about, it's still up to us to try to put out a quality product on our best foot forward. If Vince McMahon came in and said, "You guys can't talk about that. That segment was too good," hey, or wakes up one time and says, "I'm deleting the YouTube channel because I don't like it anymore." It might not be a one-to-one analogy, but that's what it is. It's literally someone's opinion. You are wrestling and performing, and this has been said by many talents, surely on your interviews, I would think. You are wrestling for an audience of one. That's it. And even though Vince will bring back people like Ultimate Warrior, Jesse Ventura, and other people that he has felt completely wrong by because it's good for business, this is the other petty side of Vince, which is so weird that you can choose to draw money with somebody that sued you, but then you don't choose to draw money with somebody that just fell asleep in the locker room.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned Ultimate Warrior because around this time, I didn't put it in the script, but around this time, Ultimate Warrior was suing WWE for the rise, not the rise and fall,
the self-destruction DVD.
The self-destruction DVD, which we'll talk about probably. I'm not sure. We'll get to that eventually. We'll get to Ultimate Warrior. Now,
that's a perfect example of what we're talking about, by the way.
That was nearly Brett's. That was nearly Brett's subject as well. Sorry, that was nearly going to be Screwed, the DVD. It was going to be called until Brett got involved.
So if you're thinking there's no way Vince will go to this length or any length to bury a talent and be that petty, he literally put his entire production part of his company, he put a complete effort into burying the Ultimate Warrior. That's the whole DVD was just to bury the Ultimate Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening, everybody made up in the end and everybody made money, and unfortunately he's gone. So why are we playing all these games when we can just all try to make money together?
And open yourself up to a lawsuit as well is crazy. The big thing that really works against Sabu for the December to Dismember pay-per-view, Sabu was given paragraphs of verbiage, I think by Stephanie McMahon, who was doing a lot of production stuff.
She gets the Sabu character, obviously.
Yes, of course, she identifies with him. Anyway, wanted him to recite certain words, verbatim, like calling him. He told me this, and I just watched the interview with me. I'd completely forgotten. He was saying I'd never say some of these words, like calling myself a champion or just words that. Do you remember like a few years ago where Vince McMahon insisted on WrestleMania being stupendous? Mm-hmm. And that, do you know what I mean? Like words like that are not natural for someone like Sabu to say. And eventually he couldn't do it. He ended up reading verbatim, actually off the script, doing whatever, and Stephanie stopped it and said, "No, it looks like you're reading." Sabu's like, "Well, I am reading. I can't do this." And then the next time, he said, "Just do it again." He said, "How about this?" And he gets the script, tears it up in front of her face, and leaves.
Then all of a sudden, incredibly.
Then all of a sudden,
that's my buddy Sabu. I love you, man, because that is so. Because if I was standing there and she 100% serious, like, this is like Shakespeare. You have to say the lines. It sounds like you're reading, and Sabu's like, "Well, I am reading. What the fuck? I am reading. What do you want me to do?" Right? And he would half laugh. Excuse my language. He would half laugh, and I'd be in the corner laughing really loud, because then he would be like, "I can't do this. I got a great idea. There you go. Great promo, everybody." And walk away.
Funnily enough, shortly after
That could have been right there. That could have been the moment that buried him permanently.
that's the moment that caused him to be injured and attacked in December to
Well, there
Dismember
you go.
late that day.
You know, and if Vince is not very protective of people, he's protective of her. And at that time, when he put her in that position, it was the worst decision ever, because how are you going to fire your daughter, who might be doing a bad job at creative, who did do a bad job at creative?
That's a future episode, Stephanie McMahon and the McMahons. I promise you that. I promise you that. We are going to talk briefly about the pay-per-view.
After I get my free game code for 2K25.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to do that first. There's a sick boy with a bad spine called M Manor. Right, let's talk about the pay-per-view very briefly. You watched it with Sabu all of a sudden laid splayed out on the floor. He's got a broken shoulder or separated shoulder, whatever they tried to claim, and he was being pulled from the show. Why would WWE, forget about Sabu and Stephanie or whatever it was, why would WWE screw over their fans on a show that's already, even on paper, terrible?
Well, wait a minute. Is that a rhetorical question?
Yes.
Yes, because we know the answer, because they do it. They do it all the time. And you want to talk about how many times in wrestling has a babyface in any company gotten injured, but said, it's the Karate Kid. I'm injured, but I still want to go out there and I want to finish the tournament, right? I want to win the tournament. That's the hero's journey. That's when you prove that you're not like anybody else out there, that you're a hero, that I can live vicariously through you. Or what you do when you've been ripped up with barbed wire, when you've been lit on fire, put through tables, when you literally have used athletic tape to seal a wound up on your bicep from having it exposed with barbed wire. Owie, my shoulder hurts. Take me to the hospital on a stretcher. Isn't that what we're talking about? That was not done by accident. That was a purposeful thing to bury Sabu. And you're saying, forget about the Stephanie promo thing. That could have been the exact reason they started really burying him. I felt so bad for him, because Elimination Chamber, the match itself, we'll get to in that second part of this series, dude, that's all they did was take everything that the fans were looking forward to completely out of the match. Starting with Sabu. That should have been a signal right there. That was foreboding about what you were about to see.
Do you know, with Sabu, it started at the second one-night stand, where it was Sabu versus Rey Mysterio, and to get out of the match with nobody losing, because Rey lost to everyone anyway while world champion, was it was like the referee just waved it off. They did like a table thing, and then the referee waved it off.
They did the original X sign type thing where everybody was out. He did a thing where he springboarded up. Rey was standing on the table. He balanced himself on the rope and then DDT'd him through the table, which looked like it should have kept both guys out. So I'll give them that. But that's not the crowd to do it in front of.
Yeah. But now we've got, here's the real comedy, right? So, my shoulder's hurting, and, he's not even been shown
you have to say, owie, Sabu hurt. Sabu hurt.
You can't read that
That's
verbiage.
what they're making him look like. Oh, my God. I got to hang. It might as well have had a hangnail.
For what it was. But the thing is, they really neutered Sabu twice there as far as physicality goes. But then the real comedy of it is the next ECW on Sci-Fi show. Sabu runs out with his arm in a sling, but then does all the moves with both hands, both arms at the same time. So there's absolutely no difference or no hampering of his physicality whatsoever 2 days afterwards.
So which means Sabu faked the injury because he's so much of a coward. He didn't want to wrestle in the dangerous match. I'm saying not you, Sabu. I'm saying that's what people will think.
The official the official, or one of the theories at the time that WWE was trying to put out there, was that they took Sabu out on the day because, man, there are just too many baby faces in this match. We need 3 and 3, not 4 baby faces and 2 heels. But at the same time, Sabu was ushered away from the arena, and security, I don't know if they actually took him to the airport, but they basically forced him out and said, you go home now, so he wasn't at Raw the next day or whatever.
Whoa, wait a minute. So he was taken out of the building on TV at an angle that injured him, and he went out on the ambulance, but they legitimately banned him from the building and told him to go home?
From what Sabu said, is that I think he was meant to be like Raw the next day, and I think maybe ECW was being taped before SmackDown at the time.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So I think he was at the ECW show, but they ushered him out one way or another. Sabu said that on my interview with him. So I'll probably put that in the clip. I'll probably, or Chris will insert that so you can hear what he says, or you, the viewers,
you get my impression. Am I off with that? Like you're literally, because they didn't want to take any chance on whatever?
Yeah, being pissed off. Yeah, they basically ushered him out. They didn't let him,
make sure he didn't go into
about.
business for himself during the pay-per-view.
Apparently so. Yeah, according to Sabu, that's what he said.
I can't see him doing that. But then again, that place pushes people sometimes to do some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's the bait and switch on the level, not on the level of as far as like the main. I mean, Sabu was in the main event. It's when Steve Austin at Survivor Series '99, they build him facing The Rock and Triple H. I don't know, in the main event in a triple threat match, and then on the show, turns out to be Rikishi, which was a really stupid decision. Ran him over, and then he couldn't make it, and that was such a bait and switch. But here's the real comedy of it all: Sabu still appeared on the DVD cover of December to Dismember.
Good for him. I hope he got an extra royalty for that. That's crazy.
The other bit of comedy is because the Sandman was originally on the poster, or at least his arm was, with the cane holding up, coming out the chimney. But because they moved Sabu out of the Elimination Chamber, they took Hardcore Holly, who Sandman was going to be wrestling in a singles, and put him in the Elimination Chamber. Therefore, Sandman, who was on the original poster, also didn't wrestle on the show. He did an appearance afterwards, caning Kevin Thorne, I think that's it.
Yeah, it was after that intergender tag match, which made absolutely no sense. We got too many baby faces, but let's put these 2 heel tag teams in a match together. You see what I mean? I know I'm kind of giving away a lot on that episode, but if you wanted to design a brand, a TV show, and especially a pay-per-view to have that brand fail, you did it to perfection. That's why I don't think it was by accident.
Next up, somebody I'm very keen to talk to you about, because he was one of my favourites as a kid when he was in TNA. It was Monty Brown. And for people who are wondering, well, why bring up Monty Brown of all people? Well, for those who don't remember, Monty Brown was, I think he debuts a few weeks afterwards on WWE ECW as Marcus Corvon, which I've written in the notes, sounds like some sort of Austrian baron. I don't know why they changed. I mean, they changed everyone's name, I guess, at the time. But on his debut and on whatever opening vignettes they have, they completely ignore his TNA run, declare him a former NFL player who was trained by Dan Severn and Sabu. And then, once again, Monty debuts January 2007 as Marcus Corvon. Brown only remains with the company for about 6 months. I think June 2007 is his last appearance, somewhere around there, when he abruptly leaves WWE with Vince McMahon's blessing after, I believe, his sister died. And he went back home to essentially look after his nieces and nephews, I guess, her children. And they don't call him the alpha male for nothing. I mean, that's like the ultimate step up.
Yeah, it really is. He was a really great talent. He might still be if he can still work. I loved his work in TNA. I loved the whole thing with the Serengeti, the Pounce. He had so much charisma, and he was just an over-the-top character. And obviously, he had a football background, so he had some legitimate mainstream appeal to him. So when he came in and they called him Marcus Corvon, everybody was like, what? It was almost a joke. And obviously, he's trying to play nice. He probably hoping that eventually he would go to the main roster and go back to Monty Brown. But the weird thing about it is he was Marcus Corvon, but same exact promos, same exact setup, same exact intensity, same exact move. It was called the Pounce, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you change his name? I know that was the way they did it back then. But man, imagine Monty Brown today. He would be like a Braun Breaker type character. be going through people. I feel bad. He was ahead of his time. And I thought for sure, after all the really important stuff, going back and looking after his family, the really important stuff that makes him, like you said, truly an alpha male. I was hoping after all that kind of settled down that Monty would go back to TNA and he would be over again. Or hopefully WWE would get their head out of their asses and call him Monty Brown and let him be the full character that he was in TNA. I believe also he ran a fitness business, like a personal training business that was really, really successful.
Hmm.
So he might have been too smart for the business.
Maybe he was. I mean, I don't know what he's up to now. I'd love to know. He was one of the people I really wanted to interview for WSI and could just never get a response from him, which is such a shame.
I
But he
always
was one of
thought
my
that he'd be
favorites
great
back
at
in the day.
local, like he was a Buffalo Bill, correct?
I think he was
played
with the
for
Patriots as well at one point. I saw.
I was hoping he would become some kind of football analyst, and maybe he would want to look into doing something like that now, because it would be great. I love this. He was, for the short time I was around Monty or Marcus, he was really like a really good dude. I just had a good, I just as much like I got bad feelings about other people and avoided them. He was one of the guys that I sought out, and he seemed to be a very nice guy.
So, with that being said, you wrestled him a couple of times in some six-man CM Punk, Stevie Richards, and Tommy Dreamer defeating Elijah Burke, Marcus Corvon, and Snitsky, Pennsylvania, Delaware. Now, did you ever take the pounce? Because, man, that looked like it hurt.
No, I assumed I would have, but I don't remember that. And that six man, that was house shows, correct? Not TV?
Yeah, both house shows.
Yeah, I think that's, you talk about Snitsky. I guess I did like wrestle him, but I don't think I really ever touched anybody as far as Monty or Snitsky. It was mostly Elijah would beat the hell out of me and stiff me. So, so yeah, I don't remember. I remember the six man tag, but I don't remember anything of memorable type of spots or anything. I think I know Punk didn't take it. I think Elijah got the finish on those matches, not, or maybe Snitsky. I know I didn't take the pounds because I would have remembered, oh, the pounds, I'll take it. Because I'd be pretty good at taking a bump like that.
Yeah.
I would have tried to
Well,
go all the way out of the ring over the top rope.
oh, other people did that as well. For
Ah,
Monty as well. I thought, yeah, it was a great finish as well. I thought he just had unlimited upside. Apparently, now, once again, apparently, Monty Brown had some issues in TNA with, you know, the whole theory of, you know, people holding him down. And, you know, Jeff Jarrett was, at the time, there were fan theories, I don't know how accurate they were, that Jeff Jarrett was sort of TNA's version of Triple H and maybe saw Monty Brown as a bit of a threat. Jeff Jarrett, I think, has gone on to say that Dusty Rhodes was someone who neutered Monty Brown's push in TNA at some point as well when he was Booker. But I don't know if you've got any insight or any theories on that.
I have no insight, but I know for a fact that, Jeff has that, you know, the Serengeti attitude about, the strongest survive and he's politically savvy. No, I don't have any information or any knowledge that Jeff did that, and you have to take Jeff at his word. And Dusty could just as easily say, I'm not into this guy. And like I said, it's a subjective business. So Dusty could have been like, nah, I don't get it. And that's the end of it. But it's not for Dusty Rhodes or Jeff Jarrett or Triple H or Vince McMahon to get. It's for the millions and millions of people out there to get it and then buy stuff off of getting in. But that's it. It's hard to, I give Vince and everybody credit to a certain extent because it's very hard to be completely objective and think maybe I don't know everything, but that seeps up a lot. Like, of course I know. I mean, company's worth $1 billion. Of course I know. Jeff Jarrett. Of course I know. Dusty Rhodes. Of course I know. It's an easier way to be than to turn back and say, maybe I'm a little out of touch and maybe I should consult with a younger person in my management staff to say, is this a good thing?
Now, it's always an unfair question because generally you say, yeah, of course, because WWE's machine can get behind anyone. But as far as you're concerned with Monty Brown and all the tools that he brought to WWE at this time, World Championship material maybe? I mean, I think IC definitely, but honestly, do you think he had all the tools to be a WWE champion or even the face of the company? Did he have that much upside?
During this era, no. During the era presently today, oh my God, yeah. He's bigger than most of the guys that have been world champion. He might not be as tall in a lot of ways. as far as height, but his size, his pedigree of being in the NFL, his charisma, his promos. Bonnie was a guy that could talk people into the building, and that's all that really counts. With that being said, let's talk about it, somebody in the same exact company at the same exact time. If you looked at Monty Brown, just looking at Monty Brown and looking at CM Punk, who would you say is and isn't world championship material?
It's funny, with CM Punk, I always thought when he cut his hair, got the beard in, stopped shaving his chest, he looked 1,000% more of a superstar than when he had the long hair and the little, new metal goatee.
He looked like a grizzled veteran with that look. Yeah.
He changed. And then, just before he left, just as an example as far as looks with Punk, just before he left WWE in 2014, he shaved the beard but kept these weird sideburns. And he looked like a total bum in comparison. And I was always like, why would you make yourself look like that when you look so great like the week before with, the stubble or the beard and the star trunks and everything? And it's like, Punk, he depends completely on the image he was putting out. I know it's nothing to do with Monty Brown, but I thought it was worth mentioning that he goes through these different looks and it affects his marketability so much, at least I guess in my eyes.
Here's the way I look at this. Okay. I just talked about the eye test. And you could say, well, Punk can cut a promo. When Punk goes out there, he can perform and he's connecting with the fans and all that stuff. That company can take it away. We just talked about Sabu. We talked about Rob Van Dam. We never talked about Dreamer, but they can neuter you instantly. It's all up to them to give you the microphone and give you the time. And then in the match to be like, you need to do this, but you can't do it. No more go to sleep. You can't do that. And then give it to somebody else who gets it over. They can neuter you and take it away from you. I'm talking about strictly, I look at Monty Brown, I look at CM Punk, and I'm like, okay, well, that dude looks like he could kick my ass. That's a pretty bad looking dude. This guy, yeah, he look a little scrappy, but he doesn't look like somebody that's ever going to fight for the world title. But the machine changed all that. The machine changed everything. In other words, who looks like who would win a fight? Who would you think would win a fight between Rob Van Dam and CM Punk?
Rob.
But who got pushed more?
Mm-hmm.
CM Punk. I'm not, saying anything's wrong with Punk getting pushed. He earned his spot. He kept his spot. He passed the test. He succeeded when they said succeed or fail. So he deserves everything he got. But then again, have they ever really neutered him? He's claimed, I've never gotten to WrestleMania main event. They've never given me this or that. But you think about it, how many people would kill to have a quarter of Punk's push? That's life-changing money right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, it's all perception is reality, pal.
Okay, one more person regarding WWE's version of ECW that we can't really not talk about in this time frame because he was going to be the face of WWECW, especially after Rob Van Dam's suspension, and that's Kurt Angle. Now, I didn't put this in the script, but I should say that Kurt Angle really hated the idea of being in ECW. But at least this is where he started doing the gum shield stuff.
Which time? Cool. The first time with the crucifixion or this time or both?
I don't think he was keen either time, if I'm going to be honest with you. Now, with Kurt, he was basically given an unconditional release, shortly after WWECW debuts because he called up Vince and threatened to kill him or beat him up or whatever he did. And then the next day he had absolutely no memory of doing it at all. So he was having, terrible issues, drug-wise and pain-wise at the same time as well. He was pushing himself way too hard, and as an Olympic gold medalist, I guess there's just no other way you can be. That being said, your memories of Kurt Angle, he left, by the way, August 14th. The last match, he defeated your man Danny Doring on a house show. And then
it was in Maryland, right? In Maryland.
Oh, you tell me. How'd you remember that?
It was in Maryland. I have a great story about that, by the way.
Please,
it's awesome.
Please tell us.
Yeah. But I remember Danny and I traveled together a lot when we were on house shows. This loop particular, I actually got a Honda Element. I got a brand new Honda Element, and we drove around to all the house shows and everything, and even to TV, because they were all local. I lived in Connecticut. Danny lived in Jersey. This match here, we had material for a year just based off of him talking the match over with Kurt. Nothing wrong with Kurt. Kurt was completely lucid. and fine, no issues with forgetting anything, if you know what I mean, like that phone call with Vince. But Danny approached me in the locker room, in the hallway. I remember it. I was just warming up for my match, which I think I was getting squashed too. And he's like, I just talked the match over with Kurt. And I said, oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? He goes, well, there's a funny story about that because, Kurt at that point, he's telling me there's a funny story, but I'm giving you a little bit of context. Kurt was headbutting people, much like he did with Samoa Joe. Remember that Samoa Joe busted open and he would always headbutt people, and that started in the WWE version of ECW. So he gave Danny an instruction, which, by the way, is a good thing to listen to, and he wasn't wrong with the instruction, but he goes, "Hey, listen, in the beginning, I'm gonna come up to you, we're gonna stare off, and I'm gonna headbutt you. Now, it's very important, Danny, that when I go to headbutt you, don't look up." So Danny's like coming up to me 7, 8 times before the match. He goes, which direction do I don't look in or don't I look in? I go, don't look up. He sort of not down, not to this side, not to that side, but only up. And I go, I would eliminate moving your head at all and just take the headbutt and hope for the most or the littlest amount of stitches. He goes, I didn't think about stitches. He's going to bust me open. And I was like, just don't look up. He goes, that's all I need to do. He goes, but if I look up, maybe he'll headbutt me in the throat. I was like, well, maybe you should look up then. I don't know. So on the way home, when we're driving, every time, pumping gas, doing anything, eating, you would be instructed, don't look up. So it was a little friendly banter after the match.
Did he look?
But yes,
did he look
I
up?
believe that was Maryland. And he said he almost did because I was like, just some kind of reverse. Is he using reverse psychology on me? Should I look up? Is he ribbing me? Like, it's wrestling. The paranoia is rampant. And then you see Kurt warming up, like before the match. And I'm like, he's warming up like he's competing for the gold medal. You realize that? I started ribbing Danny about it. I was like, I don't know. He's like, I'm going to go into business for myself. I go, oh, you go right ahead. I'll be watching that.
Did you ever wrestle Kurt?
I wrestled Kurt in a dark match before he started wrestling as Dude Love and defeated him.
No.
Yes, defeated him. I actually countered the angle slam and Stevie kicked him for the pin. And we went 3 minutes over and I had a ton of heat.
So you've got wins over Okada, Kurt Angle. Anyone else we should know?
Well, I can lie and say Triple H from Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels.
Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, of
Steve
course.
Austin.
Every time we do an episode, I have a victory.
I'll take a drink to that.
No, yeah, but yeah, I mean, clean. Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist. And you know what I did when I walked back to Gorilla? I walked up to Kurt, stuck my hand out, and said, hand them over. He said, hand what over? The gold medals. I defeated you. Give them to me. He just kind of laughed, and then I when he laughed, I said, okay, I'm not going to die. I'll walk away. I knew when to leave on the high note. I wasn't pushed.
I didn't know that. Did you wear the, did he wear the black?
Oh, the whole
black
dude loved
trunks?
it. The blue sweatpants and the tie-dye.
Sweatpants?
And the band.
No, I'm talking Kurt.
Dude
I'm talking Kurt.
Oh, Kurt had the American singlet and everything. Yeah. I don't think he had black on.
No.
I think this was right before his debut. He was tail end of the dark match run.
Was he doing the warm-up like in 2006? Did he just get more intense as time went on?
I think one of the walls collapsed. I think he knocked one of those down, and they were cinder block. I'm kidding, but he was pretty intense, and he's like pacing, and he's going, and I was like, he's just warming up, Danny. It's going to be a gear above that. That's him just like warming up lightly on the treadmill before. And he was like, I was like, well, at least he's not going to play with his food. It's over in like 2 minutes.
With Kurt at this time in 2006, it's quite interesting that you say that Danny Doring said that, because I heard an interview some time ago with Randy Orton, and at the ECW One Night Stand 2, Randy was actually, he said afterwards, it's like, Kurt, are you going to give me anything here? Because Kurt was just eating him alive, and I don't know, it's like he'd been in the business like 7 years at this point, Kurt Angle had, or in the WWE, and he was like still so intense and still just, I don't know, maybe it was just the crowd that got to him and he just like wanted to make a good impression, that
Well,
kind of
look
thing.
at his TNA run. He got even more intense in TNA.
Yeah.
You know, I told a story. I think did I tell a story here or was it the Russo show? We wrestled a handicap match in TNA against Kurt, myself and Raven, which is basically I went one-on-one with Kurt Angle. I'm just kidding. If you had a choice, well, Raven worked really hard and took the Germans, and he took a bunch of bumps. He really did. We worked hard. It was a lot of fun, but we were standing there in gorilla position, and Kurt was sitting there, and he was, remember his vignettes where he had the hoodie over there, and then at the end he goes, "It's real, it's damn." But up to that point, he just looks like a very stoic, like a statue. He's not moving or anything. So he's sitting there, and he's got the hoodie over him and everything. And we're looking, and I think I asked him a question, like, you know, you don't bother anybody, but I was like, "Hey, Kurt, is this where we're doing this or whatever?" He didn't say anything. He was staring straight ahead, right? So I'm like, okay. Turn around, Raven. I'm like, okay, I got to remember to spot her. I'm a dead man. Our music hits to go out. Kurt gets up and like this. And I go, all right, we're fing dead. Walk out. Bleep that out, Chris. Sorry.
No.
That was my verbiage. I mean, I'm just quoting myself. Ruby's watching. Ruby is watching this show. We need to bleep it out.
Right, I'm editing bleep out. So 9:15 on part 2. There you go. I've done it. I've done it for you. Do you remember the time when Kurt Angle left? Do you remember the circumstances? Because there was a heck of a lot of, even WWE's own website was talking about it. And, you know, Vince McMahon gave him like an unconditional release, no 90-day, no compete. And then in that time frame, he ends up signing with Dixie Carter and TNA. And I think he's like by far the highest paid person in TNA. I think in the interview that he said with Dutch and I, that, you know, he asked for and got over $1 million a year. And that was a part-time thing for him. So that's something that, you know, very much worked in his favor, of course. But what was the internal locker room feel about this? Because that was the face of WWE ECW, and he was never really replaced.
I think, and it's just my belief from observing this, that we already know we had one foot in the grave after the Rob Van Dam stuff, after the Sabu stuff. And also, this Kurt thing was, you know, you get to a point sometimes, we all do in our lives and jobs or whatever, where you're just like, okay, just, yeah, this thing's pretty much over. And we're just, everything was trending towards that. Whenever we thought, okay, Rob's champion is a dual champion, we're off to a great start to this. The Rise and Fall ECW DVD, the Shane McMahon and Tommy Dreamer, or anybody else that was really going to recapture the essence of the original ECW, bringing back original roster members, then Rob's thing, and then doing the job, and then Sabu being jobbed out. And, you know, these are top guys. Sandman being kind of ineffective, coming in, doing his thing, then really focusing on the Elijah Burks, the Matt Strikers, Sylvester Turkay, you know, these other people, and then Big Show you throw in there, and Lashley. You could see the writing on the wall from the very beginning as it was morphing early on. And then Kurt comes. By the way, Kurt never gave any outward inclination that he didn't want to be there. He gave his all, every bit. You know, the intensity, he wanted to carry that probably after, you know, saying, I don't want to do this because it's a step down from where I'm at. And then realizing, okay, I can lift this brand up to be up there with the main roster stuff. He took it on and he took a responsibility. So when he left, after they invested all that stuff in there, and nobody really asked, I was just like, oh, that sucks. I hope he's okay. Nobody was rumbling and saying he had a pill problem, he had a drug problem. The only way I know any of this is because I watched the Kurt Angle interview where he talked about it. But it was just disappointment. And really, we felt we were really, our days were numbered. The countdown timer was accelerating. The doomsday clock was like 1 minute to midnight at this point, and we were heading towards 30 seconds. Because it did, you know, who are you going to rely on after that? Me? Dreamer? Well, Rob and Sabu are already, you know, whatever.
Do you know who it was? Benoit.
Yep.
So
Benoit was supposed to wrestle Punk at the pay-per-view in Texas when it all went down.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it went from Rob, who suspended to Kurt Angle, who left after 2 months, to Benoit. And then ECW actually picked up in the later years when it was basically almost about to be cancelled with Christian when he came back. And he did a great job as the champion at the time.
Yeah, but it's still, are they building any stars, or are they just putting people who have nothing for on the main roster? We look like a developmental brand. We look like NXT in a way, but NXT was better and is better. They just didn't do anything for us. And just to give people a preview of that pay-per-view, like, you're going to open up a match with, I lost count at 3 sets of heat in that tag match with the Hardys and M&M. The match itself was 22, 23 minutes long, which is way too long for an opening match of any sort. And then every formula leading up to the finish of the main event it just felt so deliberately wrong what they did, which you can see right here. Every decision that they made was just a Band-Aid to carry ECW until the next, I don't know, 5 steps back from whatever happens. And just to finish off the Kurt note, his health, physical, emotional, mental health, is most important. He obviously was in a bad way watching the interviews and him speaking about it. So in essence, for Vince to give him an unconditional release was really, Vince could have been a jerk and said, I'm sending you to rehab. We're going to do all this. We're keeping you. And then when you come back, we're going to run you into the ground again. He gave him the grace to go somewhere else and earn $1 million a year.
No, I don't see that at all, though. I see it the other way. I think Vince McMahon thought Kurt Angle was going to die, and that's why they released him. I think it was self-serving why Vince got rid of him.
Well, there is a business aspect to it, and I agree with that as well. But Vince could have still run him until he went. So do you sacrifice him to go somewhere else and maybe get that company more recognition and make a ton of money? Or, you see, this is the tale of Vince McMahon. Is he going to be petty, or is he going to be the father figure? You never know.
So we had some other stuff to talk about. ECW, WWE, the experiment that we'll save for a future episode. Take a drink. And we're going to go straight into the dark match of December to Dismember as well. I'm going to give you a bunch of other facts about the pay-per-view on next week's show. But for now, let's just talk about the opening match. This is in Augusta, Georgia, by the way. ECW Stronghold. And I wasn't going to say this, but it just made me laugh that the WCW debut match with Booker T and Buff Bagwell was in Washington, which I think WCW had like one pay-per-view in ever, and practically no nitros, whatever. So,
oh, by the way, the next week, guess where they were wrestling? Atlanta.
Of course.
The very next week is like the BWO. When the BWO debuted on SmackDown, it was in San Diego. And then we were in Philly like 1 or 2 weeks later or somewhere right around there.
They're just mad. They're mad people. ECW then, of course, in Atlanta, Georgia. Had ECW ever appeared in Georgia? I think maybe they had.
Yeah, we did Georgia. I don't know. It might have been Augusta. That was when I believe Jake Roberts made an appearance in Georgia.
Oh, it's like
they've wrestled in Georgia during the later pay-per-view. I think they even had a pay-per-view there. But that might be when Jake came out. But no, they've been in Georgia, but it wasn't like the Stronghold to have it. I don't know why they booked. You know why they booked it like that? Because probably they had both TV tapings somewhere around the Carolinas, Georgia, somewhere around there. So they made that pay-per-view there.
So we've got 2 stories here. And the first one is, of course, you're one of the 9 ECW originals to appear on this show out of 29 performers, and I'm including the Sandman, who didn't have a match. I'm including Paul Heyman, who was a manager, and I was also including you, who was in the dark match, who wasn't on the pay-per-view for reasons unknown, because the pay-per-view ran 48 minutes short or something like that. But you wrestled Rene Dupree. I tried to put the feelers out, tried to find this match for you. I couldn't find it, I'm sorry. But can you talk about the match? It goes quite long, actually, for an opener as well. What did you say, 12, 14 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, something like 12, 14 minutes, and Rene and I had never worked, and I thought we had an excellent match, and I really was more mad after the match to say that should have been the opening match of the pay-per-view. Maybe not 12 to 14, which would still have been almost half the time of the match that opened the show. But, we could have given him a good 6-minute match, 8-minute match, whatever you needed. And for the people that say, well, how are they supposed to know the pay-per-view is going to end 42 minutes early? Because they block it out and format it and they know exactly how much each match is going to go. So the match, for selfish, like, confidence and pride reasons, taking pride in my work and the pride in the match, and also Rene being the same way. And by the way, they were pushing Rene in the new ECW. So he was on TV. They could have even put him over on me in the opening match. I don't understand that, but we had a really good match. I enjoyed it. And, there's tapes that always go into catering the next day. So obviously that tape is lost. I don't think it's even in I mean, it might be in the digital archives. Maybe the WWE Vault is releasing stuff. Maybe they're going to release a set of dark matches, and maybe that'll be on
They
there.
actually already have. That obviously wasn't on it, but they are starting to do that now.
Yeah, well, all we can hope for is, unless they want to really forget about the pay-per-view like most of us do, uh, then we'll never see the light of day. But it was a very disappointing start to that day, but it was another thing of them saying, ECW, but no, not really. We're not going to do that. Then the Sabu thing, and then obviously eliminate, we're jumping ahead, but who they eliminated first in the Elimination Chamber, who they left the thing with. And I'll tell a very funny story in the next episode, that I was standing next to Johnny Ace and around Vince McMahon, and what I said that probably should have got me fired if I wasn't asking for my release already. That's probably why I said it. I was like, "Look, they're going to fire me if I say this."
We've never talked about Rene. I've never spoke to him. I know you're friends with him. How many times did you wrestle Rene? Was it just this one time?
I believe this might have been the only time. As much as I shared a locker room with him throughout, WWE and ECW, we shared a ring once before on Stevie Night Heat. I booked them because I was general manager for a match, and I commentated on the match. And then after they won, I ran to the ring, gave them French kiss on each cheek to him and Sylvan, and then ran off like this. And they were like, what the hell? It was so funny.
Did you tell them that you were going to do that?
Nope, not at all.
Well, you were the GM. You could do whatever you want.
Exactly. It's in the employee handbook that I was trying to create. But no, that's the fun, though. You don't tell. I told Al and Coach, and they were trying not to laugh. I just beeline down. I think they thought I was going to do a run-in and like hit them with something before they realized that I was already up the ramp. Yeah.
Is Rene Dupree one of the Triple H victims? Because I know I repeated a story a while ago on this show saying that Rene's thighs were bigger than Triple H's when he told the seamstress, and the seamstress, well, that can't be right. We'll have to just lower that in a couple of inches kind of thing. But yeah, is Rene a victim, basically, of that era?
Yeah, I think he is, because he was wrestling, my God, was it 18 years old?
18 or 19, yeah, when he debuted on the main roster.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
18 or 19 years old, tag champ. I talked about before, at a young age, to have that kind of pressure on you and have that opportunity, and then you're tag champs, and obviously the talent's looking at you. They're probably looking at Rene and Sylvan, no different than what we said during that Maven clip. Who are these guys? Who are they? Testing them unnecessarily sometimes, especially Bubba. Bubba would get in there with them and take liberties and stuff and rough them up a little bit. So it's so weird. I can't imagine. I remember I say it over and over again. 23 years old, just in ECW, seeing Ron and Charlie with the hard camera and the handheld in a bingo hall and thinking, oh my God, especially the pay-per-view, like, look at all the lights and the truck, and to be 18, 19 years old and say, here you are, 15,000 people, and here are the belts. Go defend them. Go talk your match over with those total strangers. Wow. I give it up to Rene. And Rene right now is definitely overcoming a lot of issues post-career and everything. And he's somebody that I communicate with. And also, I talked to him. I was like, dude, you have such a future in wrestling if you choose to do that. Hopefully, politically, that'll happen. But fitness, the guy knows so much about fitness and nutrition at such a young age. I said, you should really explore that as an outside income source to what you do now.
I'm just looking. Apparently, I'm looking at his Wikipedia. He requested his release from his WWE contract July 26th. Apparently, the Chris Benoit situation, how we keep tying these things together, was the main reason why he decided to leave. I had no idea.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No.
We've never had a conversation about him leaving. Maybe on his show he's talked about it, but I do know that he has ups and downs, and the guys were pretty rough with him, and he had the incident with Bob and the match with Bob and stuff like that, that he could speak more on the details of that. I just know that, he had a very hot and cold relationship with the company and his career. It seemed like it was pretty rough. And I think that does attribute itself to age and not his lack of maturity, but being thrown at the deep end at a young age and being very green. Now, he's a second generation guy. His father, rest in peace, passed away, recently in recent months. But for Rene to still be smartened up, know what it is, but still have to kind of navigate it and learn some things the hard way, because you want to be smartened up, but you don't want to smarten everybody up to know you're smartened up. It's a really weird thing. I played dumb a lot because I had to. Because if Triple H or anybody viewed me as too much of a threat and I knew too much stuff, I was really going to be in the crosshairs.
Your thighs would shrink according to the tape measure.
Well, you don't have to worry. Hey, listen, Hunter, you can measure these chicken legs I got. Yeah.
Right. I actually had written down Steve.
They'll be giving spine infections to everybody.
Aren't you just?
They make their legs.
Stevie tries to quit is the next thing, but that sort of goes along with, I guess, the end of the show. So that is going to be next week or the week after. I don't know if this December to Dismember thing is going to be 1 week or 2 weeks split over, because goodness me, there's an awful lot to talk about as well about.
Yeah, I think just to give people a preview, myself and Tommy Dreamer both asked for our release, and Paul Heyman walked out of the company, or he got fired. I think he quit. But a lot of fallout. This was definitely the payoff in a negative way of all the ECW things that they did to kind of ruin the brand.
Okay, so we're going to be picking up December to Dismember next week, but now I thought for our What Went Wrong segment, I suggested this week that we go back to the early days once again of ECW on Sci-Fi, and a very memorable incident that happened between Rob Van Dam and Hardcore Holly. So Stevie, over to you. What went wrong?
Well, what went wrong is the table decided to be I am the table and bite back literally on Bob Holly's back. And it's, man, this is something I talked about how many times during these episodes, James, that I talk about that we are so lucky with these table spots and other dangerous spots that more guys don't have stuff like this happen. We really are. There's someone looking over all of us, because these bumps and these weapons and the position that wrestlers put themselves in, especially their back, their chest, their face. You take a 3D through a table, something like this could happen to your throat going across the table. So I'm going to play this straight through. We have the actual clip, then we have a replay and a shot as the replay is going of Bob, the gash, oh my God, the deep gash in Bob's back. Like much of anything, right? Doesn't look, we can go slow-mo. Looks like a very safe suplex from the ring through the table. Now, I was concerned. I'm going to show this right here. Look at Bob's leg right here. I was concerned he got caught up when I watched it live, because his leg went off to the side. So I thought that was the injury, because this leg is straight up like this, but that leg goes over there. So that's what I was looking at. No, because nobody had ever gotten gashed to this point from going through such a clean table bump. You can see here, they're selling, but as you close in on Rob, or should I say Bob, it's a completely different selling. It's like you know what I mean? Like usually for this bump, see how Rob kind of looks knocked out, but Bob is grimacing like it's burning. You know what I mean? There's something, but he has to stay where he is. Like his instinct is probably like, do I have splinters in my back? Did I get in? Because what he probably thought, and they talked about this on a clip that I saw on YouTube. What I would think and what I would think Bob is thinking is the thing we're all scared about. And what's that? Getting impaled, getting like stabbed by one of the legs or the metal into our back. So he probably felt like it was stabbing into him, but it was kind of that numb, kind of I'm in shock type of thing, very traumatic. So he's selling differently than Rob here. And that's what stood out to me rewatching it. When we come back from commercial, you can see, yeah, and I give them credit. By the way, if you have kids or whatever, Ruby, don't be watching this. Get her out of the room. I should have prefaced with that. But as we're looking at this, dude, right there, that gash
Mm.
all the way around under the lat. You don't know how deep that is. I mean, it's deep, but that is ugly right there. That's something that for Bob to fight through that. Now, what I would be concerned about in hindsight, what are you concerned about when your open wound is going into a dirty mat? Staph infection. And that's nothing to joke about. Not only that, such an open cut, sweat, bodily fluids, dirt on the mat from your boots, from bumping, from sweating earlier matches. It's definitely something that's just, and you can see Bob's arm. He doesn't know. He's like, look at the left arm right here. It's almost like he feels like the cut may be all the way underneath his armpit in the lat part there. So, for him to push through and keep going, because he has to know at this point too, when we're in this situation, you have some kind of self-awareness and experience. You're like, this is going to be something. Hopefully the cut's not too deep. Hopefully I'm not like bleeding out, but let's try to push through this because there's something here internally and subconsciously. That's what talent thinks. Like I said about the back injury thing, I'm an idiot too. We're all thinking in idiot ways of, man, I can get more over with this and stuff. Might as well. You already got cut. Might as well finish it and back it up. I just want to show you. See that brace right here?
Mm.
How it's flying around? Boom. See that? It's the cover of the edge of the table. It's like a plastic thing with a very sharp edge to it. And dude, even myself, when I was doing the right to censor stuff and I would grab the Dudley's table and run away, it would slice my hands up because of that edge with the banding would stick out and you have to pick the table up and it was very, very sharp. So that's exactly, see it right there,
Mm-hmm.
this part. On this side here, where Bob's laying, that was probably from this kicking out, that dug into his back and gashed him. When he landed, it probably went through, and then when it popped, it kind of like sliced him. And kind of sliced him. It definitely sliced him. But from any angle, dude, it is just a deep, deep gash, and it doesn't go around to here. But dude, that whole lat is numb. He's in shock. He's probably losing more blood than he realizes. So you're in a spot now where you're sweating, you're exerting, you're bleeding, and you're trying to figure stuff out. So you're probably how should I say, expending a lot of energy. So Bob could, Rob and Bob, that's a rib. They put that match together. Bob Holly probably might even be getting a little bit dizzy, might be feeling the effects of whatever besides being in shock. But Bob's such a tough guy. I give it to him. And once again, what didn't they do from this? They gave him a little push. They focused on this for a little bit, but it didn't elevate Bob to a permanent position. And it should have. I mean, you have hardcore Holly on ECW. And even he moves laterally after this. It doesn't make any sense.
I remember watching this at the time, and I don't know if you've got that in the footage that you've got, but Bob lands on his back afterwards as well. He knows something's wrong there, but he still does back bumps throughout the match, and it's like every single time, I'm wondering, like, because that thing's open as well. I wonder if, like, he can feel, like, the air and the wind hitting it as he's moving around and he just feels completely wrong.
I think he feels everything and he feels nothing at the same time. He's in a little bit of shock. He's went through tables. We've all gone through tables. And it's almost like you think to yourself, not every time you go through a table and this doesn't happen, that you say, oh, thank God that didn't happen. No, what you're thinking is, okay, that one is exactly how it should have went. And then when it happens, you're like, well, wait a minute, what happened? What happened? Like the guy says in What a Mighty Wind or whatever. But you're thinking, this is weird. Like, I know maybe I just got some splinters in me or something, but then that blood was stretching across his back and around to the front and getting on the mat. So Bob probably thought, I'm bleeding a little bit, takes the back bumps and doesn't even realize until he gets back there. He knows it's bad, but that he's sliced from the edge of the table. Now, maybe Bob said, I knew right away it wasn't good, but I'm finishing this match. That's Bob Holly.
I mean, this is the man who got his neck broken by Brock Lesnar and he was still throwing drop kicks afterwards. I mean, no one...
Yeah, we watched that.
Yeah.
We watched that. Crazy. Throwing a drop kick and landing like basically on the upper shoulder and almost neck when he turns over. Now, he's a real one, man. He's a real one.
To echo something pretty much that you said before, is this was a uniform table. This wasn't like the old ECW days or even WWF days, where they just grab any table they could find in the venue that day. These were very much in the days where they'd get, I don't know, 100 of these things delivered at one time because of, I suppose, that they just have the best sort of strength to breakability ratio, you know, where they keep their shape with somebody in, but then you can put them through quite easily. And then this, after years, this is the first time it's ever occurred to anyone that these tables are really dangerous in that way.
Well, has it really happened since then?
Don't think
To this degree? No. I mean, knock on wood or whatever. You know, we're kind of overdue for that, and it should happen more often. This is no different than like people hitting each over the head with light tubes. Nothing bad has really come of that yet. But then when somebody's like, yeah, I got mercury poisoning because we did a whole house show loop on CZW and I took the tubes every night. Okay, that makes sense. But how many times with barbed wire, with glass, we just watched the Darby Allin thing, talking about that, you know? The Darby Allin thing is just like, what is he doing? Devon and myself for Devon's channel. It's like he got cut up, but he still came out of it not really with a broken back from landing through the chairs to the floor. The fans didn't get cut, even though the glass went everywhere. Dude, wrestling is so incredibly lucky. Borderline, I would say blessed to not have stuff like this happen almost every week.
I was nodding along when he said, oh, we talked about it. I was like, because you could have just convinced me we talked about it, and I was like, yep.
No, it was Devon's channel. I did a video for Devon's channel about the most dangerous and scary bumps.
When's that coming out?
It all runs together. I do not know.
Soon enough.
Take a drink.
Take a drink.
Future episode.
We're going to piggyback off this onto something we don't do. And we joke that, oh, we never do, or you never do the analytics anymore. We do it every single week, pretty much. Apart from last week, actually, where we did something else. But something we don't do as much anymore, it's sort of like an in-depth on one single subject. It's almost like a lifestyle thing. Let's really break it down, literally, in this case, many, many times. And let's talk about working with tables. And I'm not suggesting this because Maven got like a ridiculous amount of views with the thumbtacks video recently, which we're going to be stealing and doing our own version at some point soon.
Has he ever been through thumbtacks?
Well, I was wondering that. Why was he talking about that? I don't remember ever landing on him. There you go. Anyway.
So the guy who went through thumbtacks, the views are going to be worse than the guy who didn't. And that just proves Maven's a better worker than me.
Yeah, I was. Well, if we got 2 million for one clip, I'd be dancing on this table that is ready to collapse at any point now.
Okay, hold him to that, everybody.
I will do. Oh no, this table will collapse because it's actually held up with IKEA legs. You know those telescopic legs?
Oh, it doesn't stand a chance.
No, it doesn't stand a chance with my girth. Let me tell you that. Right. Something we don't do very often anymore, and it's sort of like a real deep dive into a very, very sort of like a minutiae subject, and we're going to explore everything we can about tables, using them, when to use them. In fact, I didn't even write that as a thing, is when to use them, when the best time is. But the first question is, Do you remember your very first ever table bump?
I do. I do. And it was actually probably one of the roughest, if not the roughest table bump I ever took. I wrestled Taz on an ECW house show early in my ECW career. And you know the bar top tables to have the single leg and then it kind of goes out like that? Taz repeatedly would suplex me onto that it was on the outside of there. And I was taking it pretty well for having no real experience, but he gave me like a belly to belly on that. And I think he even gave me not a German, but like a T-bone type one twice on it. He was trying to break it, but it was that square table with the center thing. You're not breaking it. It just kept tipping over. So it was the ultimate botchamania. I am the table twice. So I was in 1994, I believe, before I even like started the Raven stuff. I was putting guys over. So yeah, that was my first table bump.
So Taz was still the barefoot Tasmaniac then at that point.
No. He wasn't Tasmania. Was he?
Yeah, he
Wait
would
a
have been
minute.
in '94, definitely.
No, I mean he transitioned from.
That would have been
Yeah, use
'95, I
words.
think, when he started wearing boots and shaved his head and stuff. I think he was still Tasmaniac in '94. I'm pretty sure.
He might have been Tasmaniac. You might be right, but he still was the human suplex machine, and he was still Taz in the locker room. So it was good. I mean, it was good for what it was. I'm using a Meltzer thing, good for what it was, but it was just I got thrown around. You know what I mean? I got beat up. I got eaten alive. I was there to basically get squashed. Oh man, those table bumps. I remember them. I'm like, these. I don't think these are going to break.
What is it?
And you didn't have to jump for Taz either, especially I weighed like 190 or 195.
Okay, right. So, I mean, leaving that one out, which obviously wasn't designed to go through at all. What is it like? I'll go back to ECW as well at one point, but what is it like going through like the uniform tables that we see for 20 plus years now in WWE?
It depends on the ring, by the way. In the old ECW ring, it hurt less to go through a table than the bump in the ring. So, and a lot of times that is the case. That if you go through a table, depending upon the move, it literally is just breaking a table. It's a flat bump, whether you're taking it, say, a superplex or suplex, body slam. Usually a table bump is usually something to the effect of like a choke slam bump, power bomb bump, or going off the second rope or something like that. And it just makes it easy. Now, we weren't smart enough to what we watched with the Bob Holly thing. And that would make anybody kind of pause. We weren't smart enough, nor how should I say, aware enough to know that there could be potential injuries off of this. We were so lucky not to have things. You saw when we watched double dog collar match, Anthony just threw me. That could have went really, really wrong. So, but it just disintegrated the table and it turned out to be a different yet uniform table bump.
That is on the Stevie Richards Patreon as well, that Stevie watches all the way through, gives a ton of... Because that was like the most requested match that featured you as well for a watch-along as well. And hopefully that's got a lot of interest on the Patreon as well. And I know I mentioned that, and you got a huge amount of... a huge bump in subscribers to watch that as well. You say back bump, but you've taken front bumps through tables. I'm pretty sure you've taken a 3D, haven't you?
I have. I've taken a threat. Actually, as Dude Love, when we fought, Nick Foley and myself fought the Dudleys on Raw early on when I was doing my imitation type of gimmick. And I did take the 3D. The 3D is not that hard because Devon has you here, and then Bubba grabs your head. You're protected by his arm, and it's literally just your torso that's supposed to go through. Your head clears. Devon's got the legs, so your knees aren't going really through the table. It's just your torso. And then bringing you down together is what puts you through the table. So we should break down the 3D or even the 3D through a table on a future episode or Patreon.
Take a drink. So generally you're doing a back bump through a table. How do you actually bump? And I'm specifically asking, what do you do with your arms? I mean, do you sort of like keep them a bit close together so they don't hit the edges? Do you do that maybe so it's just your torso going through? What do you do with your arms when you bump?
I've never really thought through it. You would think you would do this or you would throw them back to where you don't. But I remember a lot of the table bumps, especially power bombs. The one that Bubba gave me when we talked about it on the Devon channel when Dudleys were supposed to join Right to Censor, but they tricked us and they did this, the Dudley super bomb through a table. My arms hit the edge or hit the meat of the table, but it didn't hurt. So there's different ways to do it. Sometimes if you throw your arms back, James, what do you think you're not going to do with your arms back?
Ooh.
Tuck your chin.
Yes.
Your head will follow your arms. So if anything, when you go up for that, you're holding on to Bubba's head for that particular type of power bomb. When you take a power bomb, you sit all the way up and you usually grab and then they bump you through the table. It's actually a very high impact move with a lot of force. Like in other words, Bubba or anybody has to suplex me or he has to body slam me or he has to power bomb me and literally do it with all his might to put me through the table. So it's not my bump, it's him bumping me through the table that makes it break.
With the table, once again, just to reiterate, we're talking uniform tables here. Do they actually break your fall? Do you really feel it at all? Does it make a bump worse? Does it make a bump better on average going through a table?
It all depends. In the hard, bolt riddled ECW ring, the table was much easier to bump. Now, if you're in a ring that bounces a lot, the ring can still come up and bite you. The table can come up and bite you off the bounce. The legs could kind of also, if there's something before you even go through the table, if it's a bouncy ring and the person has to walk you over, who's to say you've seen Sabu a lot, that it's become a meme, that the table tips over, the table falls, the legs collapse. That could happen. And sometimes the guy's just stepping over to put you through it. That's enough to, and by the way, he doesn't see the table. So that's why usually in tag matches, the power bomb goes up. And I've seen people like even the Dudleys, Devon would hold the table because the ring was so bouncy. I need to keep the table where it's at. Only people with experience can know what could go wrong with that. That's why like these young kids that do it, you're even luckier than we were in ECW because so much can go wrong.
That being said, when you're using the uniform WWE tables or around about that, how unpredictable can the landing be? Or are they generally predictable as far as you know what they're going to feel like and you know how they're going to splinter out and you're generally going to be safe?
Well, the Bob Holly spot proves it's all guesswork. You don't really know. You can just assume this is where it's going to go. I'm going to land in the center. And by the way, Bob and Rob both landed in the center of the table. It was a perfect table bump, but it still went wrong. You can't trust. It's not a worker that you can tell, hey, listen, brother, when we're out there, don't let the strap come up and hit me in the back and slice me. The table has a mind. I am the table. And it is.
Do you know where WWE got these tables? Where all these wrestling companies get these tables? Because there's like some trestle table company out there who's doing brisk business sort of selling these things.
Well, now they got the announce table that just goes out and they rebuild it. It's actually breakable announce table, so they save money that way. When we were in ECW, they would go to like Staples or Office Max or one of these, and they would try to gimmick them a little bit because they definitely had more reinforcements. If you watch any Botchamania, you're going to see that, oh, they didn't gimmick that table. Just keep bouncing off it. But like I said, we didn't put that kind of thought into it. There was a news story in Philadelphia. It was the most amazingly tone deaf, no awareness about what they're watching. They literally said, and this is concerning chairs, but same thing with tables. The reason why the chairs do not hurt is because we have a special technology in the chairs that when we tap it twice, it becomes super soft. This is a legitimate local news story in Philadelphia exposing the business about how it really works.
What? So what do you think they made the chairs out of?
These are the same people, by the way, that when I did local interviews, WWE is body slamming their way into town. They're going to suplex their way into Philadelphia. I'm like, oh.
Oh, you've got to love a cliche, haven't you, with local news? Right, okay, so what was the theory behind it? So they tap it twice. What do you think it was made out of? Or was it like the loaded boot? You have to tap it twice and that releases
They didn't have the budget to even pay the wrestlers. Why they in some kind of NASA did ECW promoters or people that created the, promotion, did Dusty Rhodes and Mike Graham break into Area 51 and get this special alien technology that, well, we could cure cancer or we could feed the world, but let's put the technology into making sure the chair shots don't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds great.
When it's so easy these days, where you just clearly just shave them down.
You got me there when they, the special technique. The AEW suplexing their way into town.
Into the sandpaper shop. Right.
Good. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, like they must have watched that news story at AEW and said, "Oh, that's what we need to do."
Yeah, goodness sake. Piggybacking off what you just said, then, so there is a sort of, to use the parlance, a gimmicking of a table prior to it being used. So, are we talking? And this always used to be a knock on WCW from ECW. We don't use pre-cut tables, that kind of thing. But how would one treat a table before it's used?
If I can, I haven't seen a table in a while, but what I remember is not the band that cut Bob. That one is attached to the table and stays attached to the table to keep splinters from coming out those sides. There was a big metal kind of brace that was around the edge of the table that matched it. It was like a dark brown color on most of the tables. That was removed, and I think there was a couple other like cross braces, not the ones for the legs, but underneath, straight across, that were taken out. Those are the two things I think that gimmick the tables. But I don't know what WWE does. You're right. Where do they buy these things today? Does Vince own a table company or some kind of office company that they just, or a factory that just supplies them?
Yeah, that also makes rubber kendo sticks and stuff like that. I don't know. And I'm not sure.
Not Sandman's.
No.
I didn't get one of those.
I went to a show in like 2001. It was 2000. It was like a tribute show, right? It had UK Undertaker or whatever else. That was the one that Yokozuna should have turned up at, but he died the day before or 2 days before. And then Greg Valentine was the other name on it, and then he just went home because he was understandably too depressed. So there was a hardcore match, right? And one of them was a kendo stick, and everyone went, woo! And then some guy gets hit on the back, and the kendo stick goes, boing, 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 boing.
With no noise.
Yeah, basically. You might as well hit him with the cheese string. You remember them?
I do. Oh my
right. Okay. Right. So then
they should have shaved. They should have shaved down the kendo stick, the real one.
Yeah, if they would, you would have had just like a pool cue, and it really would have been like a cheese string or whatever they made, like the rubber they made out of. Anyway, as I said before, the pre-cut tables in WCW was always a knock that Paul Heyman used to make toward the company back in the day. But is pre-cutting a table more dangerous than not pre-cutting a table?
Yeah, I mean, there's two different mistakes when you pre-cut a table. Number one, it's kind of like Honky Tonk Man's guitar. Remember before he hit it with Jake, and then everybody was going near. He's like, "No, no, don't touch it. It's just if you just touch it or pick it up, it's gonna disintegrate." The table's the same way. If you take away the strength in the center, by the way, going through a table like isn't with it across. If you don't have those bars and those braces, it will break. It will. If you put enough force into it, it's going to break. If you pre-cut it, just dragging it could split it in half. Just setting up in the corners we've seen that happen in WCW. They pick up the table from the center and it just splits. That's the kind of stuff. That's one of those things you gimmick it enough to where it's still something that requires an amount of force to break and it won't break accidentally. We had a table that wasn't cut, that wasn't even gimmicked all that much in the Saturday Night's Main Event with Sabu. Yet he just dragged it in the leg. The leg just came out, which was kind of symbolic on how ECW was going to go. It cut the legs out from under us.
And a wonderful callback as well to earlier in the show. Stacking tables. Now this is the Public Enemy thing, since copied a million times. Have you ever gone through stacked tables, and is there any art to taking that particularly dangerous bump?
Here's a question back to you. Should we add something here to the show or to Patreon because I not only went through stack tables, I went through flaming stack tables that kept going out and they kept missing and they kept lighting it on fire. They edited it. It was when the ECW, when Public Enemy re-won the ECW tag belts, we won them off the Pitbulls and then Public Enemy. It was Pitbulls and Gangsters. It was like a month or two after we lost them. And then the finish was double flaming tables, and Rocco Rock moonsaulted me through them.
How was that?
Yeah, I got lit on fire for 2 minutes. I was I was wet down, hair back. You could tell something was going to go down. And they lit it. Johnny Grunge lit it. It went up. Teddy kind of like couldn't get set. Then he missed it. Then Johnny Grunge, by the way, what he did was instead of lighting this table, the bottom table under here, I was on this one. He lit the bottom. He did the lighter fluid right underneath me and then lit that.
I was like,
That's not on. They edited that part out. The 2 minutes just had the flames and then Rocco going through me.
I was like, you know who's going to go through the fire is because it's like whoever's the soggiest when they get to the ringside. It's always the one who's patted down or hosed down beforehand.
That was me.
So as far as the stacking of the tables, I mean, future episode, we've got to talk about the fire and analyse it absolutely. Thing is, you were saying you were 190 pounds or something back in the day, you know? Do you have to be a certain weight to go through one table, let alone two tables, or else the momentum's going to slow a lot earlier than it should do?
Well, not if the person has the force to put you through the table. They weren't putting me through like with a suplex or a power bomb. Teddy was moonsaulting. In theory, it looked like the tables were separated by 6 feet. Like it looked like a long way to go like that. But yeah, I don't know. That's the thing back then. Hey, stack the tables, light them on fire. Yeah, it sounds like a great finish. Like, what am I going to balk at that point? You know what I mean? And of course, I'm going to take it because I'm the person that pinned the Public Enemy to win the tag belt. So it's a callback to that and revenge and a receipt for doing that. So hey, it was just logistically when you look at it in the video and you when we watch it, you'll see it's like Teddy had to stand on a chair or on top of a table and then put a chair there to get the height to moonsault. It just wasn't going to work.
How many times have you done something with a table and it's just gone wrong one way or another? I mean, it could be anything from the table didn't split out or didn't break how you thought it would, or just misplacement. So, like, what percentage of the time is the table spot just a problem or goes wrong?
Not as high as I would have guessed. I'm trying to think as you were talking about that, the next question, like we said, we finished each other's. I knew which question was coming. I don't know. I don't recall anything being, because if anything happened to that degree, we would definitely be doing a watch along of it. And I would definitely be laughing about it because it's just crazy. I remember I wrestled Ken Kennedy on one of the Wildcat shows in Louisiana, and everything, we didn't do a table, but everything was going wrong. It was like a hardcore match. I threw one of those chairs in the ring, one of those plastic ones, composite ones that don't fold, and I was going to do the drop toe hold spot with them. I picked it up just to move it, and the legs separated from the
Oh.
seat. I was just like, and the fans, I mean, they exploded. It was just like, I was like, what's going on? But that was the extent of just those little things. So we watched the botch watches, like people keep. Now that's the thing with me getting experience. If the table doesn't work as a heel trying to give the table bump, okay, the finish is going to be the babyface put me through that table, or I'm never going back to that spot again. Because if we keep going back to it, guess what? It's a spot. It's fake. So now if somebody does get hurt off it, it's completely worthless because the fans are laughing.
When you land on a table, does it always have to be dead center in the middle? Is there just like a very narrow sweet spot, or can you basically get away with anywhere that's not on the legs?
No, I think the center because, well, away from the legs because that's where you get into the danger of literally being impaled. You don't know if the legs are going to come through the table. And it's not going to literally break because you have those legs supporting that. So you're gonna be lucky if you bounce off the table, much less it comes up and stabs you, impales you. The center is here's the table, these are the legs, you're in this part. That's why they pre-cut them right there in the center, and boom, just like that.
I have to do a visual here, but if a table's like that, and obviously you are going to be landing that way for the most part, have you ever landed that way, sort of going parallel with the table? Not parallel, but you know what I mean, the same direction as the table lengthways, and landed on one that time?
No, but I've been laid on the table like that and had somebody hit me with like a splash across it, or do a thing where they do like the Rob Van Dam sideways splash, boom, and bounce off you like that. So yeah, if you're laid out that way, but the person coming down to put you through the table is perpendicular, you're across the table, they're coming down in that center point that you would go through the table. Now, the scary part is you're laying there, your feet, your crotch, your head and neck, they're right there where the table is, or the legs. They could still impale you. The worst one is the worst one I've ever taken was Philadelphia, July 4th weekend, ECW. I wrestled Sabu, and I remember I got in a lot of trouble because Sabu went in the corner, I went back. Fans were chanting like, Sabu and Stevie sucks. So I came back to the corner, and it was inexperience or just letting the crowd get to me a little bit to try to get back at them. But because I knew what I was going to do, I go back to the corner and I go, F you, F you, F you, F you. Ran and did the Bobby Eaton, crashed myself in the corner, which the fans got a good reaction on. They were going to find me. They were pretty mad, and it was true. Jerry Briscoe said, dude, you don't need to do, he didn't say dude, but he said, you don't need to do that. If he said dude, I'd be like, what? But yeah, dude. So
Sweet.
he probably thought, I'll speak his language, dude. Come on. So, but the worst table bump, that was just funny because I was trying to protect myself and got hurt even more. Sabu did the Arabian face buster in that match right after that, face down. And he said, put your hand in front of your face, protect your eye, because sometimes you get splinters and stuff like that. I did that. He hit me with it. I tore part of my bicep protecting myself because it jammed up. And I still got splinters all throughout, like, right? So great job, everybody.
I've only got a couple more of these, don't worry.
That was after 1, 2, sorry. 1, 2, sorry.
Are there any other hidden table dangers then? So we've mentioned Bob Holly, and I've also mentioned RVD's eyelid, and that was just, another freak thing where a bit of splints come up and it just ripped his eyelid pretty much off his face. Yeah. But have you heard of any other weird sort of, maybe even like just freak incidents like that over the years with tables?
I was in an independent locker room, and I can't quite put my finger on it because this is not the only time this was brought up. We talk about reinventing the wheel. Okay? Here's the ultimate, you should never reinvent the wheel. Now, which way does somebody usually go through a table?
That way.
Top of the table through to the bottom. Yeah. You know what would be cool? This is exactly the way it was presented. You know what would be cool? And you know what's never been done before? How about if we go through the table from the bottom? They wanted to put the table across from the apron to the guardrail, but not down like you would go through and it's split that way, upside down with the bar exposed and everything, because nobody's ever broken a table that way. If I had a cigarette, put it out, go over, and what I would have done, what I wanted to do, if it was one of the states where you needed a wrestling license to work, to perform, I would have asked both guys, could I see your wrestling licenses? Well, if they handed them to me, I would have tore them up right in front of them, threw it at them, and walked away.
Has the bar never hurt you then? Or do you ever feel that, the one that goes lengthways, both sides of the table?
No, you're talking about the one that goes from like the leg, because sometimes they'll remove that because that's where the break would happen.
Right.
Talking about in the center of the table?
No, I was thinking, let's say that is the table. I don't know why my phone's covered in crap, but I thought there was like a bar each side there, sort of maintain the
No,
integrity.
that's the one that goes all the way around the table, that brace.
Yeah, but that's on the outer edge, sort of like this phone cover, I guess. But no, you never had tables where they'd have like a metal bar, like.
Well, if they do, the secret to the table, the secrets of wrestling. Here comes the people with the mask and the Corvette and the fog machine. We still have to watch that.
Stunt Granny.
The secrets of pro wrestling. Here comes Birdcage from ECW. But the key to that is removing every element to prevent the table from breaking. And number one thing is to break it. That's a 1B. 1A is to not get impaled and not get hurt. Is to remove every bit of bracing and hardware that you can remove and let it break while still giving it its stability. So basically, you just want to leave the legs and whatever keeps the legs from folding up. So that brace that goes 45 degrees, that folds the legs and unfolds the legs, that's essentially what it is. But any brace, any bar that keeps that center point from breaking, and more importantly, to keep that brace from going up into your back, that's what you need to remove.
Before we close down the show, Stevie, there's one more thing we want to talk about, and there was a bit of news. As I say, I said it on my channel, I said it on Storytime with Dutch. This has been the worst news week in wrestling in probably more than 5 years. It's just been an absolute dearth of anything particularly interesting to talk about as far as up-to-date stuff. But
isn't that crazy, too? We're 4 weeks out from WrestleMania.
And there's nothing.
And news has slowed down.
Honestly, there's absolutely nothing. I was tearing my hair out trying to figure out something to say on Dutch's show. And we got through it just fine, like always. But one thing that I thought would be fun for you to talk through, what you liked and what you disliked, was John Cena's first monologue to a WWE audience as a bad guy since 2003, 2004, something like that. And this segment lasted probably with adverts, 32 minutes? It was crazy, crazy long with the entrances and standing there and milking it and everything like that. But your opinion then, take us through what went right and what went wrong of this monologue and Cena's reasoning for why he turned on Cody Rhodes.
If you could pull some of the quotes up, because I remember some of them, but I don't want to be incorrect with my recall on that. Man, you want to talk about heat when he came out, the music hit. And obviously they did John Cena Sucks. They sung it like they usually do. Cena very stoic, no run to the ring, the same camera angle. We talked about same shirt, same music, same everything. They followed him, but he walked. Now, with that being said, the heel Cena, now this is just 2020 hindsight on the entrance. You know what I would have loved to have seen? The same entrance that he did against Rob Van Dam at One Night Stand. Hat down, don't see his eyes, he's looking down, he's pushing through. Like there's something about when he played a heel at One Night Stand on that entrance, and he was stoic in that way. In this way, it's almost like John Cena had a puss on his face, meaning a frown, the entire time. Like it looked like he was trying to play bad guy rather than just being a stoic, all business, kind of like he was at the entrance in ECW One Night Stand. Did you feel that way about the entrance and his facial expression? It was, I'm miserable. I'm just mad.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And I don't really know what else to expect. I think there was a lot of theories going around. There's one quote from Cena's monologue that he said.
Can I go real quick while I'm thinking about it before CT kicks in? You know what I would have loved to have seen? And it's just hindsight once again and speculation. Music hits. He comes out. He does the same stuff he always does. Salute, runs to the ring, does everything. People are like, what? And kind of cheer, doing whatever. Grabs the microphone. He goes, did you like that? Did you enjoy that? It's the last time you're ever going to see me do that. Dude. Because, and then he goes into his promo.
I thought he was going to come out in a suit and be, absolute corporate Cena. Different song, black suits, whatever he was.
I think that's going to happen. You know why? If he beats Cody, which I think you should go over on Cody at WrestleMania.
Do you? Now, a lot of people would disagree with you on that.
I do. Then you recall or you rehash the Austin corporate champion the next day but he doesn't tear it off and stun Vince or anything or hit him in the balls and take the Polaroid. That was pretty
That was
cool
amazing.
with the disposable camera.
Amazing.
But if Cena does that and then becomes corporate Cena for the remainder of the summer, yeah, I would put Cena over.
There's various different things he says. I'm not a babyface or a heel. I'm a human being. Now, this goes into a wider thing to discuss, I guess, and this is professional wrestlers using wrestling rhetoric within the body of the show itself. Kind of like I can't remember the
Triple
girl's
H.
name. No, I was gonna say, Triple H did
Oh,
do that
you're talking,
in AEW.
Are you talking about the girl from Queen of the Ring?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one thing to say it afterwards, but when you say it in the body of the show, I know she apparently shouldn't mean it that way, but do you know what I mean? Do you find that jarring still, or is it just becoming more accepted to say babyface, heel, going over that kind of thing on shows?
Well, there's a term throughout generations called inside baseball. And what this show is supposed to do in this storyline, this promo specifically, is supposed to communicate John Cena's point to everybody, that they can understand what he's saying. And that right there, you haven't explained on your show a wrestling 101 type of thing. What is a babyface? What is a heel? Now, if he said, I'm not a good guy, I'm not a bad guy, I'm not a white hat, I'm not a black hat, I don't fit into your stereotypes, I'm a human being. Same point, right? But with that, people will be like, well, wait a minute, back up a second. What's a babyface and a heel? Now they're ignoring the next 4 lines that are probably really important.
Each and every one of you. And I originally was like, oh, he went there. And then I thought, no, that's the perfect thing to say, because that is like Vince McMahon directive. That is, whoever, I think it was Stephanie McMahon, the McMahons who would say that all the time, each and every one of you, and then put the blame on the fans for why he turned bad guy and that kind of thing. But that line in particular really stood out to me.
You know what also stood out to me with that line? It's just a conspiracy that goes around once in a while that Vince still has something to do with this company. This is a Vince McMahon line. You're right. It's Stephanie writing it. It is a Vince McMahon line, not a Stephanie line. So with that being said, he says he complains about everyone or everybody booing him for years, although into the 2000s or 2010s, that tailed off massively in the last few years has been nothing but cheers. That's your notes. You're right. They sing along and he would say, you can boo me, you can cheer me, you can say I suck. You're here and you're part of the whole WWE. He was being a cheerleader for all of it. So he didn't really address that and say, I've been a phony all this time. It's what he's doing is, here's what he's doing. Whether he goes over WrestleMania or not, he's leaving the storyline and the arc open for the redemption. He's always been John Cena. Then something happens with The Rock. Then he finally gets the last however long to get that farewell tour as a babyface.
Is it going to be hard to pull back from this? To be a babyface again at the end of this run and then sort of get his approval rating, as you would say, or his merchandise sales back up to what they were pre-turn?
You know what's funny? The relation, or the analogy, I should say, that really sets the precedent here is Roman Reigns. As a babyface, boo, 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 boo. He won the Rumble in Philly. Even with The Rock there, they booed him. He turns into a dominant heel that becomes himself and shows another layer of his real personality. And what do the fans do? As a heel with an over 3-year heel championship run, the fans love him. This here is going to put an edge on Cena. He's going to be a heel, but he's going to become a babyface out of circumstance with more of an edge to him. And I think he's going to be more popular than ever towards the end.
How much heat do you think he'll get for covering up his bald spot?
Is he going to do that?
I think he should. And then, do you remember like Dude Love got like the dental flippers? You know, when he became corporate Dude Love?
Yeah.
Or something like that. or even earlier when Hulk Hogan just turned up on Nitro one day and had a wig on. Never referenced it. He just had a full head of hair one day. It'd be great if just John Cena just turned up and he had like Beatles wig. Never referenced it. Something like that.
Well, do you think the fans are going to chant that? I mean, they could have in Belgium, in Brussels, where they could have chanted anything they wanted at him, but I don't know. To me, too, the bald thing, let them run with that or whatever. But I'll tell you this, a babyface should never point that out. I was even against Austin Theory pointing that out, and then Cena just eviscerated him
Mm.
off of that. You don't want to lessen your opponent. In other words, lean into how many titles you won. Lean into how many people have believed in Cena, how many lives he might have saved by offering motivation and inspiration and all these different things. As a matter of fact, that's what's going to turn Cena babyface again. It's the old Superman kryptonite thing. The bad kryptonite makes Superman evil, but then Batman tries to get him to realize you're Clark Kent, you're a hero, snaps him out of it. I see it happening like that. But do not degrade Cena's impact as a performer. Do not talk down, because then when Cena beats you, guess what? You usually got beat by nobody.
Mm-hmm. Cody turns up, doesn't attack John Cena. Do you know what I was thinking of? It was 98, Mike Tyson, Steve Austin face off. And what made that segment so much better, there was like 20 other people in the ring all there to break it up. But this has very much been a trope in more modern wrestling, is that, these bitter rivals just go into a ring together or whatever it might be and just talk. They're not at each other, you're not clawing at each other to try and kill each other. Just Cody walks in, calls him a whiny little bitch, and leaves again.
Well, you have to set the table. It didn't just Cena just didn't turn heel, and Cody came out and kind of browbeat him and told him he's a phony or whatever, a whiny bitch. Dude, they literally beat him up at the end of Elimination Chamber, popped his eardrum, stretched him out, whipped him with a belt. Cena kicked him in the nuts. Cena was the biggest cheerleader. He hugs Cena, he kicks him in the nuts, and then they proceed to beat him up pretty much for real. And you look like an idiot. That's okay with you, Cody? You're not jumping in the now you came into Miz TV and you jumped Miz and gave him the crossroads, but not Cena? Do you see such a disconnect? You're right. The minute Cody was coming down, everybody should have filled that aisleway to prevent him getting into the ring, and Cena should have stood there and been like, "Come on." But you being held back, and maybe Cody kind of gets to him. He can get to him, and Cena cheap shots him with the necklace, the brass knucks or something. This was bad. This was not good.
I mean, ultimately, Cena's delivery, was very good and everything, and the fans were into it and stuff like that. So it's always easy to nitpick at the end of it, which is what we do and we enjoy it. Why didn't Cena mention The Rock? Why didn't Cena mention Travis Scott? Why didn't Cena mention beating Cody down at Elimination Chamber?
Why didn't The Rock show up? Why didn't The Rock show up on the Titantron? Why was Travis Scott there in the first place to not be used again? I don't know. When you have this hot of an angle off of the biggest heel turn since Hogan did it and joined the NWO, and this is what you follow it up with? Like you said, it's a slow news week, 4 weeks going into WrestleMania. It felt like they were half pregnant with trying to further the storyline. Here's Cena, but not The Rock, not Travis Scott. Here's Cody. Cody's not that mad. He's going to wait till WrestleMania. What? Doesn't a babyface say, I don't care about WrestleMania. I want to fight you right here, right now?
The one thing about John Cena's motive is when he's saying, no, I'm not a bad guy, I'm not a good guy, I'm a human being, and I'm holding the fact that you booed me all those years ago against you. But it doesn't explain why he aligned himself with The Rock, or what The Rock is offering him, or what he's getting out of it in that sense. Do you know what I mean?
You want to go one step further?
Please.
The commentators never even asked that question to pass it along to the fans. Why did he turn? Why is he with The Rock? What is he looking for? Does he still want to, is he retiring? What's going on? You see what I mean? If the commentators asked these questions and then we got one answer per week, that would be something. But literally, it's like Rock shows up whenever he wants to, says whatever he wants to, gets whatever finish he wants to, and then leaves. He's the boss. He is the final boss. But for WrestleMania, dude, from Rumble to WrestleMania, shouldn't it be all hands on deck? Especially Elimination Chamber to WrestleMania, all hands on deck. We don't, I don't even think we have all the matches yet, do we?
No, but I think we've got all the major ones, pretty much. Apart from, I think there's a triple threat match where it's not been, like with Rhea Ripley and stuff, where it's not a triple match yet, but it will be.
Yeah, but that's predictable. And who's going to watch TV leading up to WrestleMania when you already know, okay, we got to, I think it's going to be Reigns, Punk, and Seth Rollins and another three-way. So now you're throwing top guys and girls in the three-ways. As far as, that means you don't have anything for them that stands out as special.
On that, but I never actually thought about it, that it was the fact that there's like no interesting news, and or no, actually within the last week that's current on the shows or whatever, and that it's so close to WrestleMania. I don't know why I'd never even picked up on that, but that's pretty stunning. Quite frankly, there's nothing to, and same with AEW.
It should be the most amount and the hottest, most interesting news of the whole year between like well, I would say Rumble to WrestleMania, you got something happening, but especially in 4 weeks, at the time of this recording, we are 4 weeks away from WrestleMania, and there's no news.
On that basis, the show is about to end. I honestly thought, we might get this done in 2 hours. No, I think it's actually been 2 hours 40 or so far. So, how many do you need to get in per show?
I think about 3 or 4. Let's just be ha. That one's for you, Ruby, our youngest fan.
Absolutely. And on that basis, the show will close on one final but before we go, Stevie, take us out with a Patreon, what would you call it, plug, or just, a lovely Patreon plug-in to thank everyone who supports the show.
Well, first, I want to thank you for joining us on Patreon. Each and every watch-along, James has been contributing, and that's awesome. Watch-alongs every Monday, premium content behind the scenes. I interact with all the Patreon people as well. People, we haven't read them in a while, James, but I got to screenshot some questions and statements based on watch-alongs and other content. And the fans, to see them educating themselves each and every day, whether on YouTube in our comments or community posts, but Patreon, where I get to communicate a lot more, one-on-one with people. It's awesome to see people want to learn from the show. And also, they talk amongst themselves and pitch ideas back and forth and stuff. It's a really cool community to be a part of. But patreon.com/Stevie Richards. As far as my channel, Stevie Richards Fitness, and maybe tentatively named Stevie Richards Tech. Let me know what you think in the comments. And then, of course, James Romero channel. Definitely awesome for all news. You're hurting right now. There's no news, but you'll pick it up soon. And a new channel coming very soon from James Romero. Check it out. Here at the Stevie Richards Show, we definitely support everybody on the team. Thank you for watching episode 38. Next week, part 2 of ECW, the new ECW, and more specifically, December to Dismember. Definitely Dismember ECW as a brand. So thank you very much. See you guys next week.